Chapter 21:16. Sui gladly took the pills. Wang Shangwu nodded heavily and said in a deep voice, "Sir, I'll take my leave first. I'll see you at the Yun family selection 3 days later." Looking at Wang Shangwu's departing figure, Sui's heart was slightly sour. A faint melancholy could be seen in his black robe. "This guy's stubbornness is quite similar to yours. I'm sure he'll come 3 days later." Chi Fei Hong chuckled softly. He was also trying to reassure Sui. Sui shrugged his shoulders. A trace of determination flashed across his eyes. He said faintly, "The past few years in the Yun family have been a great change for Wang Shangwu's ordinary life. I'll take this gamble with him." Shaking his head, Sui tossed aside his complicated thoughts. Yun Zhongli's appearance gradually appeared in his mind. His heart suddenly tightened. He said coldly, "The Dire Sea Selection Conference. I want to see what it's all about." Spatial ripples appeared out of thin air. The black figure disappeared on the spot and headed in the direction of ancient Moon City. Boundless Land, Imperial Palace. After Mu Renjia left, he returned to the Boundless Sect first. Mu Ling accompanied Dan Ruxian back to Imperial Palace. What happened tonight was too strange. Once they returned to the palace, Dan Ruxian reported to Duke Dan, who was in seclusion. Duke Dan, who was obsessed with alchemy, flew into a rage when he heard the name Golden Pill Workshop. He immediately ordered all the vice palace masters, elders, and deacons to gather in the conference pavilion. Angry shouts and roars could be heard from time to time in the palace master's alchemy room. Dan Ruxian and Mu Ling were like children who had done something wrong. They stood beside the table with their hands behind their backs. "Wronged? You're wronged?" Duke Dan was fuming with anger. He scolded Dan Ruxian like pouring beans. The two women opposite him did not dare to talk back. After taking a sip of tea, Duke Dan began to scold again. "I told you keep a low profile. Keep a low profile. Haven't you suffered enough in the Imperial Soul competition? As the palace master, I didn't even care about the Golden Pill Workshop. What are you doing? You even want to smash their shop. Why don't you try smashing one for me?" As soon as he finished speaking, Dan Honggong's withered hand reached out from his sleeve as if he was about to strike. His old eyes were full of anger, but he still stopped in midair. Dan Ruxian immediately closed her eyes and retreated, feeling wronged. She frowned and pouted. "How would I know? I don't even have the ingredients to refine medicine for Brother Hero. I have no choice but to go look for the herbs." Dan Ruxian muttered softly with narrowed eyes. "You little ingrate. You're always talking about that brat Mu Renjia." Speaking of Mu Renjia, Dan Honggong turned his head to look at Mu Ling and reprimanded. "Little Lingzi, you're more sensible than Xian. Why are you following in her footsteps? It almost caused a disaster." Hearing this, Mu Ling sighed and curled her lips. She looked at Dan Ruxian and sincerely said, "Grandpa Hong." Dan Honggong waved his sleeves and sat down angrily. He scratched the corner of his mouth and said softly, "Now that things have come to this, we can only wait for Sect Master Situ to come and discuss how to remedy the situation. You don't have to blame yourselves too much." Dan Ruxian saw that Dan Honggong's tone had softened. She immediately leaned forward and said softly, "Grandpa, who do you think we met tonight?" Rubbing his forehead, Dan Honggong said casually, "They are." Dan Honggong paused and raised his eyebrows. Go, go, go. You'll know when the time comes." Dan Honggong tapped his finger on the table and muttered to himself, "Should I report this to Palace Master Duanmu? If it's really the one I'm thinking of, it's no small matter." Dan Honggong thought for a while and rejected the idea in his heart. He shook his head and said, "The Heaven Rider Soul competition is already embarrassing enough. If we provoke such a force, we won't be able to enter the selection competition. We can't let this leak out." Standing to the side, Dan Ruxian and Mu Ling looked at Dan Honggong, muttering to himself strangely. They didn't know what Dan Honggong was worried about. Why was he acting as if he was facing a great enemy? At this moment, a deep voice came from the corner of the alchemy room. "Now, even if you don't want to let Palace Master Duanmu know, you have no choice." The black shadow gradually turned into a ball of light and turned from black to white. The shadow on the ground became longer and longer. A black-robed figure gradually walked out. Who is it? Sensing the powerful aura, Dan Ruxian and Mu Ling immediately shot out their Yuan Qi. They activated their soul, energy, and Yuan Qi at the same time. Qila, with a wave of the black robe, a majestic Yuan Qi rushed out like a wave and collided with each other. The mighty impact quickly pushed the two girls back. In an instant, Dan Honggong quickly stood up and stretched out his hands to catch the two girls and pulled them behind him. His body leaned forward and his hands pushed out. As he roared, a powerful sound wave accompanied by soul energy collided with the black shadows, Yuan Qi aura. Bang! A deep sonic boom suddenly sounded in the alchemy room. A visible ball of energy spread out. Violent spatial ripples instantly shattered the curtains, tables, and chairs in the alchemy room, turning them into dust. Wong. The remaining shockwave swept across the cauldron in the center of the room, leaving behind a faint white mark. Dan Honggong glanced at the shaking cauldron from the corner of his eye. His white brows sank, full of fear. The person in front of him had snuck into his alchemy room without him knowing. His soul energy was probably comparable to an Yuan domain realm expert. If he was an enemy, it would be troublesome. Who are you? You don't recognize me? A clear voice came from the black robe. White, jade hands lifted the brim of the hat. Under the black robe, a pair of deep and bright eyes were staring at Grand Duke Dan. Languid and casual, but powerful ripples of light were not to be trifled with. Dan Honggong would recognize this face even if it turned to ash. Sui! Dan Honggong and Dan Ruxian shouted at the same time. Suddenly, Dan Ruxian looked as if she had seen her enemy. The flame in her hand burned brighter. Her face turned cold. You bastard! How dare you come here? I'm going to kill you today. It's him. Mu Ling seemed to recognize Su Yi as the mysterious person in Golden Pill Plaza and immediately whispered to Dan Honggong and Dan Ruxian. You were in Golden Pill Plaza that day? Dan Honggong asked with a frown, but his brows gradually relaxed. After all, Su Yi could be considered half a member of Endless Command Heavenly Palace. His hatred for Su Yi was at most for making him an Endless Command Heavenly Palace lose face. Su Yi's lips curled, his eyes cold, and his body exuded a wild and arrogant aura. He calmly and lazily stared at Dan Ruxian, smiling without saying a word. Dan Honggong immediately understood. He tilted his head and scolded. You two, get out. Don't let anyone in. But the sect master will be here soon. Mu Ling reminded in a low voice. Su Yi raised his brow, a trace of indifference flashing through his eyes. He said softly, let them wait outside. If their attitude is good, it will be a great opportunity for Endless Command. Chapter 21:17. Hearing this, Mu Ling's eyes flashed with astonishment. She looked at Dan Honggong and pulled Dan Ruxian out of the room. After the two left, Dan Honggong's eyes flashed with dissatisfaction and helplessness. He said coldly, can you speak now? Knowing that Dan Honggong was still holding a grudge, Su Yi smiled and said in a low voice, I know you're unhappy that the limitless Celestial Palace lost face in the Imperial Soul competition. But I heard that the ancient Cloud Immortal sect is hoarding herbs to prepare for the opening of the profound sea secret realm. It's the Yin family. I knew it. Dan Honggong frowned and took a deep breath. Immediately, a sharp light flashed between Dan Honggong's brows. He looked at Su Yi and said with a gentle tone, what do you think? 3 days later, the Yin family will select 3 people from the Imperial Soul Palace and the limitless Celestial sect to enter the secret realm to compensate for the loss caused by the hoarding of elixirs. Who do you think can participate in the competition? Su Yi replied. Hearing these words, Dan Honggong began to hesitate. He carefully checked the people who could participate in the competition in his mind and immediately sighed. The Yun family values the profound sea secret realm so much that they can even temporarily put aside the dispute with the Long family. There's no one in Juqian Palace who can participate. Dan Honggong shook his head. Dan Honggong narrowed his eyes and said to himself, The Limitless Celestial Sect will definitely let Mu Renja participate. If the Limitless Celestial Palace can't send anyone, won't they lose face in the boundless land? He turned around and nodded. Dan Honggong wouldn't let Dan Ruxian take such a big risk. He said in a low voice, I can participate in the competition for the Limitless Celestial Palace. Really? Dan Honggong's eyes lit up. Then, he frowned and said, What's your condition? He laughed inwardly. This old guy is really smart. He nodded and said, Not only will I go to the Yun family, but I'll also bring someone with me. I'm afraid the Limitless Celestial Sect won't agree. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Dan Honggong said with a troubled expression. The Limitless Sect had always been close to the Yun family in secret. Even if they didn't know about what had happened in the desperate straits of the Black Sea, they would still have heard about it. If it were anyone else, they would not give up so easily. That's a problem for you to consider. I can only guarantee that the Limitless Command Sky Palace will gain face in front of the Yun family, and it definitely surpasses the Limitless Sect. Yi shrugged and said slowly. Then, Yi stood up and looked at Dan Honggong. He said, What do you think? It's not a loss, right? Think about it. Bang! Dan Honggong immediately looked at Yi. He could not afford to lose face in front of Palace Master Duanmu. He gritted his teeth and said, Fine. The Limitless Sect want to snatch it from me. I'll ban him again. Without the herbs, it's useless even if you have talent. Poor Limitless Sect. Chi Feihong was already laughing inside Su Yi's mind. With a calm expression, Yi chatted with Dan Honggong for a long while before leaving. Dan Honggong would be the one to negotiate with the Everlasting Sect. Limitless Command Sky Palace, Conference Hall. Why does your Command Sky Palace want 2 spots? An elegant and refined voice suddenly hardened. The sound waves rippled and shook one's soul. You don't want the herbs anymore? If you have thick skin, I don't care. Dan Honggong's face turned red. The group of Vice Palace Masters behind him also shouted. Immediately, the noise in the discussion hall was so loud that it was about to overturn the roof. The bargaining continued for a long time. Outside the hall, Mu Ling and Dan Ruxian held hands and walked out of the palace. They whispered to each other and chatted happily. Outside the Limitless Command Sky Palace, the waves gently rolled under the moonlight. It was very much like the thoughts of a girl. Mu Ling and Dan Ruxian sat side by side and looked at the bright moon in the sky. Mu Ling's mind kept replaying Su Yi's frivolous face. Ruxian, that person just now was Su Yi. I didn't expect him to be so young. He's even younger than junior brother Ren. He's so strong. Hearing this, Dan Ruxian immediately snorted and said with a cold face, This guy has embarrassed me and grandfather many times just because he's young and can fight. Even in alchemy, you made grandpa lose all face. Mu Ling looked at Dan Ruxian's angry face and knew that Dan Ruxian had always been high-spirited. After being taught a lesson by Su Yi, it was difficult for her to vent her anger. In that case, he's your nemesis. Mu Ling chuckled. Bah, if he was half as good as senior brother Jia, I wouldn't hate him so much. Arrogant. He's even more arrogant than those 2 from the Yun family. Dan Ruxian rolled her eyes. Junior brother Jia is good in every way. He's just a martial arts maniac. Mu Ling chuckled and shook her head. I wonder who else will go to the Yun family's desperate situation. Dan Ruxian, who already knew the general situation, began to feel melancholy. He should be the next one, right? Mu Ling rested her chin on her hand and turned to look at Dan Ruxian. Her eyes were clear as she looked at the star chests in the sky and said faintly, Will it be you? Dan Ruxian sniffed sadly, thinking that Mu Ling was talking about her. She said in a low voice, I'm only good at alchemy. If I enter a desperate situation, I'm afraid I'll be a burden. It won't be me. Upon hearing these words, Mu Ling immediately rejoiced. Soon after, an undetectable glint flashed across her eyes. For 3 days, Su Yi stayed in the Infinite Command Heavenly Palace. At the same time, he inquired about the Long family from Dan Honggong. The rest of the time, he was cultivating and preparing to go to the desperate situation of the Lagoon Sea. Aren't you going to see your brother? In the quiet room, Chi Feihong finally flew out after confirming that there was no one. He looked at the surrounding cauldrons and sniffed from time to time. Hearing this, Su Yi slowly opened his clear eyes. A trace of worry flashed through his eyes. Then, he shook his head and said in a low voice, "I'd better not go. If I go, I'll only help him. It won't do him any good." Chi Feihong chuckled and looked at Su Yi approvingly. He asked, "Haven't you thought about taking in a disciple?" Taking in a disciple? Su Yi stood up. His vigorous aura collided with the air, and a small fluctuation spread out. "You're now a big shot of the 4 sections. Without a disciple, you won't have any face at all." Chi Feihong stroked his chin. Su Yi scratched the back of his head. He had never thought about taking in a disciple. He was used to being alone. If someone called a master, it would be a bit of a hassle. Even the Bawang sect was managed by Nangong and Merciless West. If he had another disciple, it would be even more troublesome. "Let's find a chance." Su Yi walked to the table and took a sip of tea. He looked up and said, "Let's go. Lu Ti and the others should be here." As for the selection of disciples, they didn't know the specific rules for the selection. After a discussion between the Infinite Command Heavenly Palace and the Infinite Command Heavenly Palace, the Infinite Command Heavenly Palace finally made a concession. They decided to send 2 people and the Infinite Command Heavenly Palace 3. However, the Infinite Command Heavenly Palace would go first and the Infinite Command Heavenly Palace would go second. The first 3 would be chosen to participate in the desperate situation of the Lagoon Sea. Translator, Namiyami Editor, Namiyami. Chapter 21:18. It was early in the morning, and the steps were covered in a faint layer of green from the morning dew. However, it was a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere in the Limitless Sect's martial arts hall. When Su Yi arrived, there were already many people gathered in the martial hall of the Limitless Sect. With a casual glance, he could see that the people from the Yuqian Palace and the Limitless Sect were divided into 2 groups. On the left were the Yuqian Palace, and on the right were the Limitless Sect. Sect Master Situ Mu sat on the right. Su Yi had seen him before in the Tianfeng battle. His 2 disciples, Mu Renjie and Mu Ling, stood to the side. As soon as Su Yi entered, everyone looked at Su Yi. At this time, Su Yi had changed his appearance to that of a young man in his late 20s. However, the more unfamiliar he was, the more curious and suspicious everyone was. "Wen Yuan, come over here," Dan Honggong called out to Su Yi and looked forward with a calm expression. This was the name Su Yi had told Dan Honggong. He had taken his father's name and his mother's name, Wen Fu, and put them together. "Is there a person called Wen Yuan in the Imperial Heavenly Palace?" On the side of the Limitless Sect, Sect Master Situ Mu immediately turned his head and asked Mu Renjie, "I don't remember Dan Honggong having such a disciple. I've never seen this person before." The elders of the Limitless Sect were also discussing. Their gazes fell on Su Yi and quickly moved away. However, seeing that the Vice Palace Master and elders of the Yutian Palace didn't react, they could only discuss in low voices. "Wen Yuan?" Dan Ruxian and Mu Ling looked at each other and smiled. Because they had been told in advance that they couldn't say anything, they had a tacit understanding. Su Yi walked to Dan Honggong's side as if nothing had happened and brushed past Dan Ruxian. Dan Ruxian glanced at Su Yi. She was still angry and threatened. "If you dare to embarrass our Yuqian Palace, I won't forgive you." Su Yi leaned closer and whispered, "You should be concerned about your big brother Renjie first. You bastard." Dan Ruxian lowered her head and frowned in embarrassment. When Mu Ling saw this scene, her eyes flickered with a strange light. "Senior Mu Ling, do you know this Wen Yuan?" Mu Renjie also lowered his head and asked Mu Ling. Soon after, he said, "In the Imperial Heavenly Palace, there are 3 spots and 1 is still empty. What's going on?" "After the selection, you'll naturally know. After all, you 2 have met before." Mu Ling smiled and nodded at Mu Renjie. Then, she quickly walked up to Su Yi. Looking at Su Yi's sparkling eyes, there was a fleeting and infinite divine essence hidden in them. Mu Ling once again felt a kind of soul energy suppression, and she couldn't help muttering to herself, "So strong. It's about the same as Master." Hello, I'm Mu Ling. Nice to meet you. Mu Ling smiled as she extended her jade-like hand. She was gentle and elegant. After her gaze met with Su Yi's, she quickly averted her gaze. Mu Ling had left quite a good impression on Su Yi during their time at Golden Pill Plaza and Guyu Mountain. Su Yi did not reject her. They shook hands out of courtesy. Su Yi smiled faintly as his eyes lit up. Nice to meet you. Good luck, he said softly. Mu Ling didn't expect Su Yi to be so gentle. It was completely different from the domineering aura in Du Kong's room. Mu Ling's expression changed slightly as she nodded and murmured, "Yes, let's do our best." Mu Ling smiled and retreated to Dan Ruxian's side. She said softly, "He's quite good. What you said is completely wrong." "Che, Sister Mu Ling, don't tell me you like him." Dan Ruxian laughed softly and poked Mu Ling's elbow. Mu Renjia also saw this scene and was puzzled. It was as if he was asking when Mu Ling knew this when Yuan. The noisy hall was suddenly suppressed by a voice. Everyone held their breaths at the same time. "Lord Lu Ti of the ancient Cloud Immortal sect has arrived." Qin Ru's voice resounded in the martial arts hall. Immediately, everyone stood up and stared at the door in unison. Their eyes revealed a trace of light and some reverence. Lu Ti, who looked like a transcendent being, strode in. Beside him, Qin Ru wriggled her huge body and swayed with her oily belly as she walked over. She led Lu Xian and Lu Yi into the hall. Both of them still had their chins raised high and smiled frivolously, full of disdain. "Lord Lu Ti, please excuse us for not going out to meet you." Du Kong and Situ Mu stood up at the same time and walked forward from the crowd. Lu Ti smiled and a few strands of silver hair fluttered in the wind, adding a bit of elegance. He said softly, "Greetings, seniors. Lu Ti is just a deacon, so there's no need to stand on ceremony. This time, I'm here on the orders of the family head to select 3 talents to go to the trial to make up for the deficit of elixirs. May I know how to select them?" Sitamu stretched out his right hand, and a trace of excitement appeared between his brows. Lu Ti smiled and looked at Lu Xian and Lu Yi behind him. He said, "Qin Ru should have told you about the general situation. The 3 trial testers can choose the 2 Yus behind me as long as they can fight for more than 100 breaths." After that, Lu Xian and Lu Yi came forward with evil smiles. After looking around, Lu Xian smiled and said, 50 breaths. That's enough. Don't waste time." Lu Yi smiled and shrugged his shoulders. He said in a low voice, 30 breaths. "Deacon Lu, you still have to give the elixirs to the elders. There's not much time left." Immediately, the faces of the people of the Limitless sect and Yuqian Palace changed. Du Kong and Sitamu's faces also darkened. 100 breaths became 50 breaths and then 30 breaths. How was this a selection of talents? It was obviously humiliating the Yuqian Palace and the Limitless sect. Damn it, how can you bully people like this? The ancient Cloud Immortal sect has always been high profile. It seems that these decades of low profile were all fake. How dare they talk like this? Arrogant. Do they really think that there's no one in the Yuqian Palace? How dare they brag? The Limitless sect is not afraid. People of the aristocratic families can't be so arrogant. Dan Honggong also sneered softly. His eyes instantly shot out a surge of soul energy, exerting it on Lu Xian and Lu Yi. Du Kong said in a sinister voice, 8th level Origin Emperor brats. No wonder you're so arrogant. Just any 2 people from a Yun family can become our deacons." Sitamu also smiled. He, who had always been neutral, had anger in his eyes. 2nd level Origin Domain Realm Origin Qi surged out. The blue robe behind him fluttered even though there was no wind, causing Lu Ti and the others to change their expressions. Seeing that something was wrong, Lu Ti's heart sank. He shouted angrily, "Don't be presumptuous." Lu Ti looked around and saw that everyone's eyes were solemn. He smiled and said, "Everyone, these 2 are the grandsons of our ancient sect's elders. It's their first time out of the sect, so it's inevitable that they are arrogant and arrogant. You can say that they are arrogant. Please don't be offended." Dukong placed his palm on Sitamu's shoulder and said softly, "Since they're selecting talents, if we don't accept the challenge, it will show that we're not qualified to enter the Yun family. For mobile phones, please visit .com." Chapter 2119. 30 breaths it is. Dan Hong-gong's lips curled into a faint smile. His carefree appearance immediately stunned everyone. Sitamu turned around. Mu Renjia and Mu Ling from the Limitless sect were both at the 7th level of the Origin Emperor realm. If they were to fight it out, they might stand a chance. However, Dan Ruxian from the Imperial Palace only had the soul energy of an early 4th level Origin Emperor realm martial artist. That one Yuan whom they had met for the first time? How is that possible? Sitamu and everyone else looked at Dan Hong-gong with a strange expression. Dan Hong-gong was calm, as if he had a card up his sleeve. Everyone was suspicious. What was this old man trying to do? 30 breaths it is. Since Dan Hong-gong had said so, Sitamu clenched his teeth and said, "Rin Jieling." Beside him, Dan Hong-gong also let out a low shout. His deep voice was mixed with Yuan Qi and instantly filled the entire martial arts hall. One Yuan, Ru Xian. The four of them looked at each other and walked forward with determination. Dan Hong-gong and Sitamu said in unison, 30 breaths. Any objections? No objections. The four young men's faces were as hard as steel. They did not expect the selection to turn into a battle of honor. No one would back down when it was a matter of honor. Looking at the four of them, Lu Xian and Lu Yi's eyes changed slightly and smiled disdainfully. Seeing this, Mu Renjia puffed out his chest and raised his sword-like eyebrows as he stared straight at Lu Xian and Lu Yi. His fighting spirit was boiling hot as he said in a deep voice, "I've said it before, I want to defeat you here." Lu Xian slapped his head and said, "Oh, so it's you guys. I almost forgot. Fine, Lu Yi, I will go first. You can go after whoever can make it through. I will suffer a little loss, so you can save your energy." Lu Xian said faintly. "Damn it, how arrogant. I will kill him." Dan Ruxian pursed her lips tightly. Facing Lu Xian's provocation, she was so angry that her knuckles had turned purple and white. Her fingerprints were deeply embedded in her palms. "Aren't you going to say something?" Dan Ruxian glared fiercely at Su Yi, but Su Yi's lips curled up. He said indifferently in a low voice, "If you like to compete with the dead, then go ahead." "What did you just say?" Su Yi's words immediately made Lu Xian and Lu Yi's expressions change. Lu Xian's cold eyes stared at this unknown person. Lu Ti quickly stopped and looked around as if he was looking for someone. Seeing that the two brats were about to explode again, he immediately said, "Hong-gong, Sect Leader Situ, are these four youngsters participating in the selection?" "There's one more. He's still on his way." Dan Hong-gong's eyes were cold as he said indifferently. Lu Ti's eyes tightened and then dimmed. He said in a low voice, "Okay, there was no time to lose. Let's begin." Immediately, everyone made way for a circular field in the martial arts hall. In the middle of the field, a circular platform with two extremes of yin and yang slowly rose. As the high platform rose to the lowest level, two rays of light instantly poured down from the top of the martial arts hall. The high platform also emitted a mysterious light. Yin and yang limitless platform. Lu Ti squinted his eyes and said to Lu Xian and Lu Yi behind him, "This is the most famous platform of the limitless sect. Standing on it and using the two extremes of yin and yang to drive the energy, it will protect the losing side. To a large extent, it will prevent the innocent from being hurt. Don't overdo it." After a pause, Lu Xian and Lu Yi looked at each other indifferently and then said with an evil smile, "Then let's see what kind of talents the Limitless Sect and Juqian Palace have." Whoosh! Lu Xian stretched his body and his body swayed slightly. Then he landed on the platform steadily, like a wisp of smoke. Looking around at the four candidates, Lu Xian made a beckoning gesture with his hand and provoked Su Yi and the others. "Who's first? I'll go and meet him. According to the agreement, it should be the Limitless Sect." Mu Ling's tender lips curled up and a trace of anger appeared between her eyebrows. "Sister Mu Ling, I'll go." This arrogant brat, save your energy. The second one to go, beat him to death. As soon as she finished speaking, the energy under Dan Ruxian's feet turned into a ball of fire. Mu Renjia and Mu Ling's expressions changed. Mu Renjia's eyes shone with a cold light. He knew that Dan Ruxian didn't have any hope in the first place. She was paving the way for the people behind her. Unknowingly, the two sects had united against a common enemy and were fighting against an external enemy. The flames wrapped around her body, and a faint green light surrounded her like an inextinguishable green vine wrapped around her body. Whoosh! Dan Ruxian's early fourth-rank soul energy burst out from her body, releasing a hissing sound with chips exploding. Dan Ruxian of Juqian Palace. Please enlighten me. Dan Ruxian frowned. Two streams of energy, one green and one fire, shot out from her palm at the same time. No wonder the Imperial Palace sent Dan Ruxian up. She can control the wood and fire elements at the same time. What a rare talent. Qi Fei Hong praised through his spiritual awareness. This girl's talent in alchemy is as unforgettable as her fiery temper. Sui looked at Dan Ruxian calmly and nodded inwardly. Ruxian, this girl. Below the stage, Dan Honggong gripped the armrest of his chair tightly. His expression suddenly became extremely gloomy. The advantage he had painstakingly gained in negotiating with a limitless sect was instantly destroyed by Dan Ruxian. He immediately shouted at Lu Ti. Deacon Lu, don't overdo it. Let's begin. Lu Ti understood. He waved his sleeve and said to the stage, let's begin. When he saw the order to begin, Lu Xen crossed his arms and carefully observed Dan Ruxian. Her almond-shaped eyes and charming eyes were extremely youthful and beautiful. Origin Qi swirled around his body, adding to his noble aura and making him seem untouchable. Dan Ruxian, my first match is against a beautiful little girl like you. I can't bear to do it. Lu Xian's long and narrow eyes surged with a trace of playfulness. Suddenly, Dan Ruxian's anger boiled. She pushed her palms forward and shouted angrily, "You arrogant lecher, get down from the stage." Bang! Dan Ruxian did not give Lu Xian the slightest chance. Two energy ribbons shot out from her palms and exploded. The ribbons were like fire dragons, roaring with flames and instantly igniting the space. Chi! In the distance, Lu Xian was not in a hurry. He quickly formed hand seals. Two balls of moon-white energy wrapped around his hands and quickly turned into a cloud-shaped bow. Water formed 1,000 transformations. Witnessing Lu Xian's move, Sita Mu gasped. Dan Honggong's expression also turned ugly. He murmured, an emperor-grade martial skill. It's like adding wings to a tiger that's already at the 8th level of the Origin Emperor realm. The Yin family's elder really knows how to give his grandson a treasure. She and her hang in there. Woo! On the high stage, Lu Xian pulled the bowstring. He squinted his eyes and lightly released his fingers. The huge cloud-white bow rushed out like an unbridled wild horse. Suddenly, a vast pressure broke through the space as if it had pierced through layers of water curtains. Several space ripples spread out at the end of the bow, an arrow, and violently collided with the fire dragon ribbons. Translator, Namiyami Editor, Namiyami. Chapter 21-20. Bang! An explosion rang out in the air, accompanied by a series of sharp whistling sounds. The surrounding space began to show signs of shattering, and the air began to tremble violently. You think that's all you've got? Take this. Dan Ruxian's eyes blazed. Her hand seals changed as she shouted, break! Bang! The moment the fire dragon made contact with the cloud arrow, it opened its bloody maw and completely enveloped the cloud arrow. Then, several green vines shot out from a maw at a strange angle and speed. Boundless wood elemental energy rapidly converged into sharp blades. Like short flying swords, they once again blasted towards Lu Xian. Such two consecutive attacks immediately drew a round of applause from the audience. Good job. That's how you fight. Mu Ling stomped her foot but Su Yi and Mu Renja said at the same time, "It's not that simple." Mu Ling followed their gazes and saw the longbow in Lu Xian's hand transform into a shield. "You want to fight me with just this?" Wishful thinking. Lu Xian's lips curled into a sinister sneer as he formed a hand seal with lightning speed. Thump thump. In a short instant, several green wooden swords nailed into the cloud shield. Then, the sound of metal breaking came from the shield, and the wooden swords turned into sparkling light and scattered. "What?" Dan Ruxian's eyes trembled, and her heart sank. She hadn't expected her attack to be broken so easily. Mu Ling's scream from below the stage made Dan Ruxian's heart beat wildly. She raised her eyebrows again. "Careful!" Mu Ling covered her mouth and cried out. At some point, the milky white smoke scattered from the shield had followed the fire dragon and wrapped around Dan Ruxian. Then it spread to her arm like maggots. "Retreat!" Dan Ruxian was so frightened that she broke out in a cold sweat. Her brow trembled, and a surge of soul energy slowly came out, condensing into a gust of wind as she prepared to repel the white smoke. As expected of an alchemist, in the distance, a faint white thread had wrapped around Lu Xian's index finger as he lazily manipulated the white gas on Dan Ruxian's hand. The corner of his mouth was slightly cold. Under Lu Xian's control, the white gas instantly turned into a feather. As if it had a mind of its own, it kept fiddling with Dan Ruxian's long hair as if it was trying to seduce her. The powerful white thread tightly bound Dan Ruxian's arm. Dan Ruxian found that her soul energy was being suppressed by a strange energy. No matter how hard Dan Ruxian tried to resist, she couldn't do anything. Damn it! Dan Honggong saw this, but he was anxious in his heart. His face darkened as he stared at the situation on the stage, but there was nothing he could do. After all, the other party did not really harass her granddaughter. She could only blame Ruxian for not being as skilled as the other party. She clenched her fists so tightly that they were about to shatter. At this moment, in the waiting area, Su Yi and Mu Renjia's eyes were similarly filled with killing intent. They hated Lu Xian's provocation and provocation to the bone, and they gritted their teeth. This little bastard, Chi Fei Hong, who was in his mind, also couldn't bear to watch. He showed disdain and disdain. "Lu Xian, if I don't kill you later, I swear I'm not human." Mu Ling, who was standing in the middle, was so angry that her lips had turned white. Everyone present knew that no matter how vast Dan Ruxian's soul energy was, there was still a gap between it and the soul energy of an 8th-level Origin Emperor. She went up to exhaust Lu Xian's strength. However, the Yun family's methods were too brilliant. Dan Ruxian was already at a disadvantage before she could even get close. "Let me go, bastard. Lecher." Dan Ruxian, who was struggling on the spot, was so angry that tears flowed down her cheeks. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Lu Xian's actions attracted a wave of curses from below the stage. The elders of the Limitless Sect and the Heavenly Drive Palace were pointing at Lu Xian and scolding him loudly. "You brat, let go of our young lady. I'll kill you. This bastard, he's humiliating us. Lord Lu Ti, this brat from the ancient Cloud Immortal Sect, is so presumptuous. Are you not going to do anything about it?" Even Lu Ti could not stand it anymore. He frowned and scolded. "Lu Xian, don't forget to stop when you're done. You're representing the entire ancient Cloud Immortal Sect." On the stage, Lu Xian, who had forgotten himself, shook his shoulders slightly and smiled at Lu Yi, who was behind him. Then, he bent his fingertips and a white gas quickly dissipated from Dan Ruxian's arm like a spring. Dan Ruxian, who was struggling desperately, fell heavily to the ground because of the rebound. Su Yi and the others rushed forward. Mu Renjia held Dan Ruxian in his arms, his eyes full of love. "Brother Renjia, Dan Ruxian's face was red. She turned her head away in shame, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mu Renjia sighed deeply and stroked Dan Ruxian's hair. He whispered, "It's okay. Brother Renjia will avenge you." On the stage, Lu Xian with his hands behind his back, looked at Su Yi and Mu Renjia. He raised his eyebrows and said jokingly, "The first one done. Little beauty, don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame it on the fact that you're also from Yuchin Palace. S/forever LCGO E free Q unspecified currency read W novel F$0Q. Do you have a problem with Yuchin Palace?" Su Yi glanced at the sorrowful Dan Ruxian, and a trace of coldness appeared between his brows as he looked up at Liu Xian on the stage. Liu Xian shook his head. When he looked at Su Yi, his long and narrow eyes flashed coldly. He said bitterly, "No, no, no. I don't have a problem with Yuchin Palace. I only have a problem with Su Yi. Unfortunately, he's also a member of Yuchin Palace." Mu Ling looked at Su Yi and suddenly felt a surge of anger. She said to Su Yi, "When Yuan, Yuchin Palace has gone up. Let me go this round. I'll make him pay for what he said." After thinking for a while, Su Yi looked at Mu Ling, who was full of killing intent. He knew that Dan Ruxian and Mu Ling had a good relationship. Now that she was eager for revenge, she was full of anger. Su Yi had no choice but to agree. He frowned and whispered to Mu Ling, "He's good at long-range attacks. You must force him to get close. Be careful." Mu Renjia also walked up and whispered to Mu Ling. He then looked at Liu Xian with burning eyes. "Okay." Mu Ling nodded and stomped her foot on the ground. Her body flew up and landed on the Yin-Yang limitless stage as light as the wind. Then, she held a light blue sword in front of her. The corners of Liu Xian's mouth curled up. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Mu Ling with interest. "You look pretty good too," he said softly. "I'll go easy on you." "Bastard, do I need you to go easy on me? I'll make you pay for what you did to Sister Ruxian." Mu Ling glared at Liu Xian as she gripped the hilt of her sword tightly. Her 7th-level Origin Emperor realm energy instantly surged out. Amidst the monstrous energy, a bone-chilling cold wind swept out. Chapter 21-21. Brat from the Imperial Palace. Are you going to let a woman stand in front of you all the time? Liu Xian mocked. Immediately, everyone's attention was focused on Wen Yuan. There was still one more person from the Imperial Palace who had not arrived. Dan Ruxian had been defeated, so the Imperial Palace had placed all their hopes on Su Yi. Suddenly, Su Yi received many piercing gazes, but his face was as calm as an ancient well. He said indifferently, "Me? Do you want to die that badly?" Immediately, the entire hall burst into laughter. Countless pairs of fiery eyes fell on Liu Xian as if someone had finally vented their pent-up anger. They raised their heads and laughed without restraint. "You!" Liu Xian's face twitched slightly. He snorted coldly and said, "Shameless boasting. After I'm done with the little beauty, I'll deal with you." Then, Liu Xian retracted his gaze and pointed his finger at Mu Ling. He said softly, "Let's begin. I'll let you have 3 moves. Don't say I bullied you. Arrogant. I don't need you to let me have my way. Die." Mu Ling yelled. As soon as she yelled, Mu Ling's feet were wrapped in light blue wind attribute Yuan Qi. She moved the tip of her sword gracefully, causing a few dazzling sword flowers to appear. After the sword flowers left her body, they suddenly enlarged in front of her. Bang! Bang! Light flashed, and the sword light was biting cold. The wind attributes surged and filled the air, releasing an extremely terrifying aura. On the stage, Mu Ling's silhouette trembled violently as she was enveloped by the blinding light. Her graceful silhouette disappeared abruptly as her wind attribute left behind a trail of afterimages as she pounced towards Liu Xian. When Liu Xian could see clearly again, she was already 5 meters away from him. So fast, the defeated Dan Ruxian pursed her red lips. Her eyes were filled with astonishment. A 7th-level Origin Emperor against an 8th-level Origin Emperor. If she doesn't have an advantage in speed, it will be troublesome. "Mu Ling, you have to hold on," Su Yi said faintly. Mu Renjia frowned. Although Liu Xian had provoked him several times, his true strength was not to be underestimated. Hearing Wen Yuan's words, Mu Renjia and Dan Ruxian looked at Wen Yuan beside them. Mu Renjia's gaze was complicated. He asked in a low voice, Wen Yuan, do you think Mu Ling's chances of winning are high? Su Yi's eyes trembled. He took a deep breath and watched the battle on the stage. After 3 moves, Mu Ling was only 2 meters away from Liu Xian. It's impossible for her to win. Liu Xian hasn't used his full strength yet. According to the rule of 30 breaths, Mu Ling's chances are 50-50. Su Yi said faintly. That guy is indeed powerful, but is it really that difficult for even Big Sister Mu Ling to survive? Dan Ruxian's gaze was heavy. Su Yi slowly raised his chin, and his tone instantly became serious. Mu Ling is currently in a fit of anger, using all of her killing moves and martial skills. She has consumed too much of her Yuan Qi, and her opponent has been dodging her attacks. It is obvious that Liu Xian's speed is faster, and he is consuming Mu Ling's Yuan Qi instead. Immediately, the 3 of them looked at Mu Ling and Liu Xian again. I'm finally close to Liu Xian. Mu's gaze was similarly anxious. He looked at Mu Ling without any hesitation, and his entire body unconsciously stiffened. Bang! On the stage, when Mu Ling finally got close to Liu Xian's body, Liu Xian's expression changed slightly, but he quickly calmed down. He drew a moon-white short saber in front of him. The biting cold saber moved in front of him, and the saber seemed to have a spirit of its own as it protected Liu Xian. The 2 crescent moon sabers spun back and forth in front of Liu Xian and suddenly collided with Mu Ling. 3 moves have passed. Let's see what other moves you have. Mu Ling's feet didn't stop moving. With a loud bang, she once again unleashed the strength of a 7th-level Origin Emperor. A long sword wave shot out, and a faint whistling sound resounded through the sky. It violently attacked Liu Xian. Sword-splitting silver moon. Break! Mu Ling shouted. As soon as she shouted, the huge sword wave set off hundreds of ripples in the space. The fierce aura was accompanied by rolling cold aura, and it directly bombarded the everlasting yin-yang stage until it shook. In the distance, Liu Xian also squinted his eyes, and his expression turned serious. He quickly formed a hand seal, and 2 silver-white saber lights quickly combined to protect his body. Zong! The 2 balls of silver-white light were like a wall of light, blocking the terrifying sword wave that came crashing down. The impact was like a bomb, and the sword wave was sent flying along the arc of the saber edges into the sky. Bang! Suddenly, a sonic boom resounded. The silver-white light was shattered, and a shattered pale, white water vapor spread out on the stage. Mu Ling, who was in the middle of the stage, cautiously observed the surroundings. Her eyes were clear, and she was breathing heavily. 20 breaths left. Qin Ru's loud and piercing voice echoed in the ears. This guy, what the hell is he doing? Time was running out, and Dan Ruxian's face was slightly pale. She looked at the snow-white stage in puzzlement. Even this guy's weapon is formed by water-attributed energy. Mu Ling's attack just now happened to create a water-attributed energy environment for Liu Xian. This is going to be difficult. Mu Renjia said softly and shook his head. Su Yi also crossed his arms and fully activated his spiritual sense, spying on Liu Xian's traces in the water vapor. His soul energy, which was comparable to the Yuan domain realm, immediately captured the figure in the white mist, as expected of a member of the Yun family. His control of the attribute of energy is incomparable to that of ordinary forces. Qi Feihong also stared at the stage, and he could see the clues at a glance. Using the abundant environmental factors to create an ability similar to a spatial barrier, greatly increasing his advantage. This is a smart idea. He stroked his chin, and then the corner of his mouth curled up into a smile. He whispered, "Unfortunately, if he meets me, only death awaits him. B version RA, Y is caret, Y is G, all O is / pirated, Y0 inch on the stage." Mu Ling was a little exhausted because she had used too much energy just now. She looked around vigilantly, But in the milky white water attributed energy, there was nothing but white mist. There was no trace of Lu Xin. Get out here, you sneaky bastard. In desperation, Mu Ling's long sword once again shot out a beam of sword light. The hot air split the mist in front of her, and the water vapor immediately gathered again. It's useless little beauty. This is my world. It won't be that easy to leave. Lu Xion's cold laughter came from the water vapor. It was like the cry of a crow, extremely unpleasant to the ears. Mu Ling frowned immediately, and a layer of energy armor gradually surged in front of her. She raised her eyebrows and said, "There are still 15 breaths of time. If you don't attack now, you'll lose. Do you really think you can win? You're so naive that it's cute." Lu Xian was not in a hurry. As soon as his voice fell, 4 white water arrows rapidly shot out from all directions. Bang, bang. After getting a clear look, Mu Ling once again raised her sword and shot out 4 bursts of origin chi at the water arrows. The huge impact caused ripples to appear in the surrounding space. Chapter 21-22. Right after the 4th strike, a ferocious roar of a tiger and leopard came from the ground. Roar! Mu Ling's gaze sank. A leopard made of white water vapor roared as it lunged at her from below. Its 2 large paws grabbed at Mu Ling, and with a crisp sound, Mu Ling's sword was flung far away. Boom! Another paw landed, and another paw landed on Mu Ling's body. Immediately, Mu Ling was thrown into the air like a balloon. Damn it! Mu Ling, who had taken the attack head-on, felt a metallic taste in her chest. In the sky, her expression changed drastically. Just as she was about to circulate her yuan qi, 5 to 6 leopards formed from water vapor charged at her from all directions. Bang, bang, bang. Terrifying sonic booms resounded through the air. The ferocious roars of the leopards expanded along with the bubbles, and finally converged into a loud explosion. Clang! On the stage, the audience could only see Mu Ling being tossed around like a balloon. She was being attacked back and forth, swinging left and right. When the water bubble finally exploded, the elemental energy armor on Mu Ling's body also shattered in a sparkling light that filled the sky. Mu Ling fell heavily to the ground. She was already on the verge of fainting. At the same time, Qin Ru's voice rang out. 30 breaths of time is up. Seeing this scene, the faces of the people from Imperial Palace and Limitless Sect darkened. They looked at Lu Xian, who was slowly walking over from the cold water vapor, without saying a word. Damn it, this guy calculated the time perfectly and only defeated Sister Mu Ling at the last moment. He's too much of a bully. Tears of anger welled up in Dan Ruxian's eyes again. Beside her, a black figure rushed into the sky. It was Mu Renjia of Limitless Sect. He landed on the stage like a bolt of lightning and picked Mu Ling up. "When you on? Catch!" Mu Renjia gently sent Mu Ling to Su Yi, and Su Yi caught her with a raise of his hand. Mu Ling's face was pale. Su Yi placed his hand on Mu Ling's pulse, and his eyes burned with anger. Her ki is exhausted, and her internal injuries are severe. Dan Ruxian also lifted Mu Ling's arm and blurted out. Immediately, the two glared fiercely at Lu Xian on the stage. A black and gold halberd had already appeared in Mu Renjia's hand. He held it in front of him, and the humming sound of metal made everyone's eardrums hurt. "Sui, let me do it this round. I will personally avenge Senior Sister Mu Ling." Su raised his eyebrows. At this time, his loathing for Lu Xian had reached the extreme. He said indifferently, "Sure, feel free to hit me. With just the 2 of you?" Lu Xian breathed softly as his gaze fell on Mu Ling's body. He said softly, "Just a little exercise, and this little beauty won't be able to do it." Mu Renjia shook his head, and a strong killing intent surged from his cold face. He said softly, "You're insulting your sect. You are ruining the reputation of your sect." "What?" Lu Xian frowned, but soon he could feel the strong wind coming from Mu Renjia. What a strong wind attribute energy. It seems to have a little lightning attribute as well. He looked at Mu Renjia in surprise. Muling's speed was not on the same level as Mu Renjia's. In the blink of an eye, Mu Renjia had already arrived in front of Lu Xian. Look at his feet. Lightning star chasing boots. It's a great help to people with wind attribute. Even I am envious of this kid's speed, Qi Feihong said softly. On the stage, Lu Xian finally put away his indifferent attitude and frowned. His body swayed, and he retreated rapidly. You will pay the price for what you have done. Mu Renjia roared. The halberd in his hand was like a lightning snake, and in an instant, 18 lightning bolts shot out towards Lu Xian. Asterisk Chi Chi. Asterisk the 18 lightning snakes seemed to have solidified, and the air in front of Mu Renjia was scorched. The sound of the wind was loud, and the attack was even more aggressive. Asterisk Chila. Asterisk the lightning snakes roared, and when they reached Lu Xian, they converged into an even larger lightning snake. It was like an ancient beast opening its mouth, as if it wanted to swallow everything in the world. Asterisk roar. Asterisk the lightning snake's fierce eyes shot out 2 surging rays of light, blocking Lu Xian's escape route. On the yin-yang limitless stage, the fierce energy was enough to make one's heart tremble. Mu Renjia's face sank. In the light, he looked like a god of war. His robe fluttered behind him, and he shouted, Yin-yang lightning light. Kill! Suddenly, everyone felt as if doomsday had arrived. An enormous soul pressure covered the sky and covered the earth. Sect leader Sidhu has taught a good disciple. Even the limitless sect's sacred weapon has been passed down. Dan Hongong's face trembled. He was also shocked by the attack. On the other side, Dan Hongong noticed that Lu Ti's expression did not change, and his heart sank again. The huge shadow of the snake broke through the air, and suddenly, a pitch-black crack appeared in the space. On the high stage, the terrifying and deep light hit Lu Xian's position like a meteorite. In a short moment, the terrifying impact shattered the space on the high stage inch by inch. In the shattered space ripples, electric energy swept out. Asterisk bang. Asterisk plus new in. Soonest Decat 0x on the high stage, Mu Renjia's figure appeared again. In the dissipated space, Lu Xian's figure was nowhere to be seen. Only a violent panting sound could be heard behind him. You are worthy of me being serious. Lu Xian, who was drenched in sweat, smiled evilly. His eyes were bursting with radiance. What? Everyone below the stage was dumbfounded. That attack did not hit Lu Xian. Water clone. Good move. Mu Renjia's heavy face instantly turned gloomy. Just when he was about to attack with all his might, Lu Xian actually chose to use the water clone to help him resist the shocking attack. To be able to gather such a real water clone in the Origin Emperor realm, Sitamu and Dan Hongong also recognized Lu Xian's move and instantly frowned. A crisp clap was heard, and a stream of water attribute Yuan Qi flashed under Lu Xian's feet. Like lightning, he appeared in front of Mu Renjia in an instant. 20 breaths left. Qin Ru reported the remaining time again. 10 breaths is enough to kill you. Lu Xian sneered, and his eyes were filled with coldness. The 2 short swords in his hands turned into swords and pierced towards Mu Renjia. Asterisk buzz. Asterisk at this moment, Mu Renjia's eyes moved slightly, but he did not dodge. His body twisted slightly, and the black-gold halberd blocked in front of him. The snow-white battle armor was deployed, and he gritted his teeth and charged towards Lu Xian. Is he going to attack directly? Below the stage, the elders of Yuqian Palace and Limitless Sect were extremely surprised. No one had expected that after Dan Ru Xian and Mu Ling's shocking attack was blocked, Mu Renjia would still choose to attack directly. Chapter 21-23. In an instant, Mu Renjia's body swept across the sky. His 5-feet-long halberd danced like a whirlwind. His body rose into the sky in an instant, and the black and gold flowing light in his hand gushed out. Good lad. You actually used the wind attribute energy to expel the water vapor. You purposely let Liu Xian get close to you so that you can use the thunder attribute to blast him. Sui said in a low voice after seeing through Mu Renjia's intention. Suddenly, Liu Xian felt a chill spreading from the bottom of his heart. It was too late for him to retreat now. Below the stage, everyone was looking at Mu Renjia with astonishment. They were all waiting to see if Mu Renjia's move would succeed. L update S. Min HN fast asterisk up. 0A the water vapor blade was blown away by Mu Renjia's wind attribute. When Liu Xian tried to do something else, it was already too late. He hurriedly set up a layer of water mist in front of him and could only watch helplessly as the thunderous sound that shook the heavens and earth resounded. A huge black and gold lightning python gushed out from Mu Renjia's hand again. The mighty attack made everyone tremble with fear. The lightning struck Liu Xian's shoulder like a raging dragon. Liu Xian was instantly thrown to the ground. After losing his center of gravity, Liu Xian forcefully twisted in the air and staggered to the ground. At this moment, Liu Xian's shoulder began to ooze dark red blood. The corner of his mouth twitched in pain. On the opposite side, Mu Renjia was also falling from the sky. With every step he took back, the yin-yang limitless stage beneath his feet would rapidly tremble. Mu Renjia, who had used 2 killer moves consecutively, also took a few steps back. His face was slightly pale. Holding on to his halberd, a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that using such a move forcefully was also a kind of injury to him. 10 breaths left. Qin Ru reported again. Immediately, Liu Xian was obviously flustered. White and purple water vapor began to hover around his body. The purplish-white saber in his hand was unusually sharp. In a split second, Liu Xian's figure flew up. Once again, he was heading towards Mu Renjia. What a powerful duo! Below the stage, all the experts looked at the 2 7th or 8th level Origin Emperor Realm experts and exclaimed in surprise. Especially Mu Renjia. With his strength and age, if he could go to the Yun family to gain experience in a few years, the Limitless sect would definitely reach a higher level. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Mu Renjia's eyes shone brightly once again. A powerful aura surged out from his body once again as he soared into the sky. Boom! Suddenly, in the space, overwhelming Yuan Qi attributes burst out, and the sound of water, thunder, and wind intertwined, stirring up the surrounding heaven and earth energy. In less than 5 breaths of time, the two of them had already exchanged dozens of blows. The experts present were all stunned. If not for the yin-yang limitless platform, the entire martial arts hall would have long been blasted into smithereens. Bang! 30 breaths have passed, Qin Ru said in a clear voice. In the sky, the terrifying energy storm was still continuing. The destructive attacks wreaked havoc in the sky above the high platform. The two figures were blurry. The energy radiance that swept out bombarded the long curtains of the entire martial arts hall into powder. When it spread to a certain range, it completely disappeared. Suddenly, the experts of Yuqian Palace and Limitless Sect all stood up and shouted at the stage, "Time's up! Lord Lu Ti, time's up! Please stop immediately!" Sitamu's heart palpitated as he became anxious. Mu Ling was already injured, and Mu Renjia had managed to hold on for more than 30 breaths of time. The stalemate could not continue. Dan Ru, Xian, also quickly arrived in front of Dan Honggong. Dan Honggong also said to Lu Ti, "Could it be that the Yun family is here to hurt people, not to pick people?" Liu Xian, time's up. Stop fighting. Lu Ti's expression instantly froze as he shouted loudly, "Grandfather, go up and grab him." Dan Ruxian frowned and said, looking at the high platform, where the fierce battle was in full swing, and neither Liu Xian nor Mu Renjia was willing to stop, Dan Honggong was somewhat hesitant. If he or Sita Mu were to participate in the battle between the younger generation, wouldn't they lose face? Those who go back on their words should get down here. Suyi's voice suddenly sounded behind him. Under everyone's shocked gazes, Su-yi was like a fiery red flame as he instantly charged into the battle. Visible to the naked eye, Su-yi's aura suddenly erupted, and a fierce soul energy attacked the minds of the two. Looking at the sudden appearance of Su-yi, Mu Renjia's pupils abruptly shrank as he felt a great pressure pressing down on his heart. At this moment, Mu Renjia immediately stopped all of his killing moves. Mu Renjia, who was still in the air, immediately felt how terrifying Su-yi's aura was. Moreover, Su-yi's aura was on a completely different level from his. In the blink of an eye, Su-yi had stopped Liu Xin and Mu Renjia's attacks. Su-yi said in a low voice, "Time's up. Leave the rest to me. Don't get entangled with him. Go down and rest." Mu Renjia's aura had already withered. He looked at the Wen Yuan in front of him with a shocked gaze and then nodded. "You want to leave? Not so easy." Liu Xion's eyes were scarlet. Suddenly, a saber light flashed in his hand, and with one slash, it was as if the sky was going to be split in half. No! Everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. A corner dog would jump over the wall. Liu Xion actually launched a sneak attack. Looking up at the sky, a ferocious shockwave rushed towards Su-yi and Mu Renjia. Under the ferocious attack, the entire platform began to shake violently. In the next second, it was unknown who shouted in the entire space, followed by exclamations of surprise. Everyone's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Su-yi pulled Mu Renjia and disappeared into thin air. Faint ice crystals streaked across the sky, and when the afterimages streaked across the sky, they were immediately annihilated. Bang! When everyone blinked again, Mu Renjia had already been thrown off the stage by Su-yi. After landing, Mu Renjia's expression became sluggish for a moment, and then he said in a daze, "So strong. Is he really from the Heavenly Palace?" Not good. Looking at the stage, Liu Ti's expression changed. In the sky, Liu Xian, who had lost his primordial qi, had exposed his weakness. Immediately, Dan Honggong and Sita Mu stood in front of Liu Ti, and a group of elders stopped the anxious Liu Yi. Sita Mu laughed and said, "Master Liu Ti, don't participate in the selection of children. The Yin-Yang Limitless Stage has protective measures. Nothing will happen." Hearing this, Liu Ti's expression became gentler. He looked at Liu Yi beside him and said, "But the third round has already ended. Then it's over. The two of them are quarreling. You can't do anything about it, right?" Dan Honggong followed Liu Ti's words and said faintly. Then, everyone looked at the high platform. Liu Xian, who had lost all his primordial qi, was like an abandoned balloon, served by Su-yi. Chapter 21-24. Bang! Bang! Su-yi executed the Fuyao's 100 transformation steps at extreme speed. His figure was like lightning as he launched a terrifying attack in the blink of an eye. High up in the sky, the sound waves that were stomping on the flesh were like the waves of a tsunami, shattering the surrounding space ripples. The experts present were stunned by the dazzling attacks. Mu Renjia, Dan Ruxian, and even Mu Ling were frozen. They gasped and looked at the sky without saying a word. Looking at the illusory footsteps that were smashing heavily on Liu Xian's body, Liu Yi, who was watching from below the stage, was dumbfounded. Who was this Wen Yuan in front of him? If Wen Yuan were to be the first to go up, then it would not be just 30 breaths. Even 300 breaths wouldn't be enough to determine the outcome of the battle. Then who exactly was this Wen Yuan? On the other side, Liu Ti, who was not affected by the violent attacks on the stage, frowned and glanced at the crowd behind him. After looking around, Liu Ti knew that if no one else came, then Wen Yuan would be the only one left in the selection. Who is that person who hasn't come yet? Liu Ti lowered his head and smacked his lips. He was not worried about Liu Xian's safety at all. "My lord, young master Liu Xian is being crazily kicked by that Wen Yuan, just like that. Will there be any problems?" Qin Ru, who had come over at some point, asked with a sunken face. Liu Ti slowly raised his eyebrows and looked at the sky. He lowered his voice and said, "These two fellows are used to being arrogant and domineering. It's time for them to suffer. If they are allowed to continue like this, the selection will become a farce. It's good for them. At the same time, a rumbling sound came from the stage again, and an incomparably huge energy swept out. The illusory figure gradually dissipated. Under everyone's gaze, Lu Exin fell heavily to the ground like a bird with broken wings. Bang! With a muffled thud, Lu Exin, who had fallen to the ground, was covered with countless wounds and was bleeding profusely. Lu Exin, who was panting like a cow, had no yuan qi in his body. Helpless, he could only sit on the ground and cover the wound on the corner of his mouth. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Wen Yuan, who was slowly falling to the ground. Only Lu Ti knew what it felt like to have so many feet on his body. The other party didn't even use his origin qi, but each of his kicks gave him a heart-wrenching pain. It seemed uncomfortable, but it didn't shake the foundation of his cultivation. From an outsider's point of view, he had been kicked as badly as a dog, but as long as he was given time to recover, he would be as lively as a dragon and as lively as a tiger. Damn it, this brat is insulting me. Touching the large black footprint on his face, Lu Exion's eyes were filled with flames of fury. His teeth were bulging, making him look like a wild beast that was about to go berserk. Looking at Lu Exion's expression, Su Yi crossed his arms in front of his chest and let out a sigh of relief. A trace of bright craftiness flashed across the depths of his eyes. Then, Su Yi threw out a sentence. His face was cold, and he didn't give him any face. Have you seen enough? If you haven't seen enough, you can get up and continue fighting. You, Lu Exin, who was struggling to get up, once again staggered to the ground because of the injuries from the kicks. His weak body trembled on the stage. Seeing that Lu Exin had no strength to fight back, Su Yi sneered and said in a loud voice, "Those kicks just now were purely for interest. I will return the humiliation of Jutian Palace and limitless sect to you. But it's a pity that I can't kill you on the stage." "You want to kill me?" Lu Exin smiled bitterly. His voice was as sharp as a knife. At this time, Lu Yi had also jumped onto the fighting ring and helped Lu Exin up. He glared at Su Yi as if to declare that the Yun family had always been the one to bully others, but no one dared to bully him. His eyes were calm and fearless. Su Yi indifferently made a beckoning gesture to the two of them and smiled without saying a word. It was as if he was saying, "If you don't accept it, fight again. Brat, how dare you insult the Yun family? Don't you know who is behind me?" Lu Yi's eyes were full of resentment. He lifted Lu Exin up and began to infuse yuan qi into him to heal. Su Yi spread his hands indifferently and looked at Lord Lu Ti below the stage. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he said in a serious voice, "You two are just cats and dogs, and you want to represent the Yun family? This time, you came here to embarrass yourselves. And remember, don't look down on Jutian Palace." After saying that, Su Yi turned around and jumped off the stage. He walked toward Mu Ling and Dan Ruxian. Lu Yi shouted behind him, "Brat, you want to run? I'll deal with you." Su Yi lowered his head and cared about Mu Ling and Dan Ruxian's injuries. He said faintly, "Hurry up and heal your brother. Don't talk nonsense." Both of them were stunned. This guy wants us to hurry up and heal our injuries? Soon, Su Yi's words made their faces turn red. Their gloomy eyes were enough to tear Su Yi to shreds. "Watch for free forever? T/G, say 0-inch, I'll give you 2 hours to heal your injuries. Is that enough? If there's only one of you, it won't be a challenge at all. You can't beat me." Su Yi shook his head and said calmly. As soon as his voice fell, not only Lu Exin and Lu Yi, but also everyone present thought that they had misheard. This young man really wants to fight 2 people at once. Separating Lu Exin and Mu Rinjie just now is really exciting. However, he wants to challenge 2 8th-level Origin Emperors at the same time. Who is this young man? Dan Honggong. Is Wen Yuan sure he wants to challenge 2 people? Lu Ti sized up the calm young man in front of him. His words and expression didn't seem like an exaggerating person. His soul power flew out from between his eyebrows, ready to pry into Su Yi's cultivation. A cold gaze shot over from his side. Lu Ti's heart skipped a beat when he felt his soul throbbing. Don't pry into my cultivation, Lord Lu Ti. You know clearly whether you're here for the selection or to test my strength. Don't do anything dangerous. Su Yi said coldly as he walked to Dan Hongong's side. Of course. Wen Yuan is my disciple. Didn't both of you say there's no one in Yuqian Palace? It's not impossible to fight two people at once. Dan Hongong's tone wasn't polite. He glanced at the two arrogant people on the stage. Dan Hongong's words attracted everyone's attention. All the experts present looked at Su Yi in shock. However, Su Yi rolled his eyes in his heart. This old man really knows how to flatter himself. He actually said that he was his disciple. Forget it. He gave him a big slap in the face during the Yuqian Soul competition. Letting him be in the limelight now was also giving face to Xiao Man's wife. This is a good deal. Lu Xian, Lu Yi, since that's the case, hurry up and heal your injuries. Lu Ti waved his hand and stopped persuading them. Lu Xian and Lu Yi, who didn't dare to be distracted, suffered a big loss this time. During the healing process, they would occasionally cast murderous intent at Su Yi. Chapter 21-25. The two's eyes occasionally met, but they quickly looked away. This action caused ripples in Su Yi's heart as he thought, this Lu Ti is not bad. I'm still looking forward to Shangwu's return. As time passed, the auras of the two behind him became more and more intense. Killing intent spread out in all directions. I've already boasted, don't let me down. But that brother of yours, isn't he coming? Dan Hongong whispered beside Su Yi. Su Yi nodded, indicating Dan Hongong to rest assured, but his eyes were fixed on the light at the entrance. At this time, Su Yi was also somewhat uncertain. In 3 days, he had already sent people to the depths of the ancient Moon Mountain range to spread the news that the selection would be held in the martial arts hall of the Limitless Sect. It should be fine. In his mind, Qi Feihong could see Su Yi's thoughts. He knew that Wang Shangwu was Su Yi's reverse scale and weakness. Delaying for 2 more hours meant that he was waiting for Wang Shangwu to come. In the quiet martial arts hall, Dan Ruxian quietly walked to Su Yi's side with a hesitant expression, but finally said, "Don't worry, that person will definitely come. Thank you for helping me vent my anger and saving Brother Renjia. Last time, I was also in the wrong for making a fool of you in front of everyone. Your talent is not bad. If you have the opportunity, come to the headquarters. I'll ask Elder Hong Mo to guide you." He didn't expect Su Yi's attitude to be so good. Back then, he had tried so hard to get under Su Yi's wing, but Su Yi had agreed so easily. Dan Ruxian's face was full of smiles, and Dan Hongong was grinning from ear to ear. This scene was seen by the Limitless Sect and Mu Renjia. Mu Renjia was surprised and looked at Su Yi with respect and doubt. Suddenly, Su Yi stood up, and the people of Yuqian Palace and Limitless Sect also stood up without knowing why. "We're here." Su Yi's eyes flashed, and the corners of his mouth gradually rose into a smile. In a split second, everyone's gaze was cast towards the entrance. A vigorous and sturdy young man had barged into the martial arts hall. It was Wang Shangwu, the person Su Yi was worried about. After not seeing him for 3 days, Wang Shangwu's aura had become even fiercer. His flesh and blood, which still had some fat on it, had become extremely lean. Although his bulging muscles were full of scars, his bright eyes had become even more domineering. Vaguely, a fierce aura was erupting from his body. With firm steps, Wang Shangwu walked into the hall under everyone's gaze. While everyone was still puzzled, Wang Shangwu looked around and saw the 4 members of the Yun clan. He quickly walked to Lu Ti. "Lord Lu Ti, Shangwu is here to participate in the selection." Wang Shangwu's voice was low and his breathing was unstable. It was obvious that he had expended a lot of energy to rush over. From the moment he came in, Lu Ti's heart finally calmed down. After checking Wang Shangwu's cultivation without revealing his expression, he found that he was still at the Origin Void Realm. Lu Ti patted Wang Shangwu's shoulder heavily and nodded with a smile. Good. It's good that you're here. Not only am I waiting for you, there are others waiting for you too. Starter Zero following Lu Ti's line of sight. Wang Shangwu's face was gloomy. His eyes were filled with doubt as he looked at Su Yi, who was in disguise. Wang Shangwu, Senior has been keeping this seat for you. Su Yi walked up and tried his best to keep his voice from trembling. The corner of his mouth revealed a mysterious smile. The senior that Su Yi mentioned was naturally the mysterious black-robed man. Wang Shangwu said softly, "Good. I'll listen to Senior and join the Imperial Palace. It's just that I haven't reached the Origin Emperor realm. Senior won't be angry, right?" Wang Shangwu pursed his lips tightly and looked at the scars all over his body helplessly. I don't mind. Your brother told me that your talent is amazing. Shangwu, don't fight for the honor of our Imperial Palace." At this time, Dan Honggong looked at Lu Ti meaningfully and said with a strange smile, "Don't regret it, Lord Lu Ti." Hearing this, Lu Ti looked at Wang Shangwu with a complicated expression. He had already peeked at Wang Shangwu. Could it be that there were other shocking changes in Wang Shangwu? Brother? Wang Shangwu was even more confused. Su Yi's eyes focused and stared at Wang Shangwu. His pitch-black eyes flickered and he said softly, "You really don't recognize me?" Staring at Su Yi's deep and bright eyes, Wang Shangwu opened his mouth wide. Ripples gradually appeared in his tiger-like eyes. He was stunned speechless. His reddened eyes were filled with memories of his childhood friends. However, he was awakened by Su Yi's slap. Su Yi's expression became serious. He frowned and shook his head, indicating Wang Shangwu to keep quiet. "You go first later. If you can last 30 breaths of time against one of them, you can enter the Yun family as a disciple of the Imperial Palace. We'll enter the Yun family together," Su Yi said faintly. Wang Shangwu finally came back to his senses and saw that it was the two brothers Lu Xian and Lu Yi on the stage. Immediately, his eyes flashed coldly. At this time, the two of them had finished healing. Lu Xian and Lu Yi returned to their previous frivolity. Seeing Wang Shangwu, Lu Yi was incomparably cold and arrogant, saying, "I was wondering who it was. So it's the trash that the Yun family didn't want. What? You still join the Imperial Palace? Don't you have a backbone?" Creak. A fierce aura suddenly erupted from Wang Shangwu's body. Su Yi could see with a glance that Wang Shangwu had already reached the 9th level of the Origin Void stage, but was still a step away from the Origin Monarch stage. "Brother, then I'll go first. I have enmity with him. I said I'll defeat him here." Wang Shangwu was already impatient. His eyes were filled with rage and blood. Wang Shangwu had waited for this moment for too long. Only he knew what he had experienced in these 3 days that allowed him to advance by leaps and bounds. "Wait." He stopped Wang Shangwu with a single sentence. He pointed a finger between Wang Shangwu's brows. Instantly, a surge of soul energy swept out like a great river. The vast soul energy accompanied by dense earth attribute energy was like a rainbow that enveloped Wang Shangwu's body. Instantly, everyone looked at him suspiciously. Whispers of discussion could be heard everywhere. "He's imparting a martial skill now? Is it useful? That little guy is only at the Origin Void stage. How can he fight with an Origin Monarch? I don't think so. As the saying goes, sharpening one spear at the last minute will shine even if it's not fast. What the hell is he doing? This young man is only in his 20s. Don't tell me he has some shocking ability? He's imparting a martial skill?" Lu Ti's eyes widened as he looked at Su Yi's actions in disbelief. At this time, Mu Renji, Sitamu, Dan Ru Xian, and the others gathered around Su Yi and looked at the two of them with strange gazes. Bang! Within the space, a rumbling sound rolled out. The originally quiet martial arts hall instantly spread out like water ripples due to the energy fluctuation. Chapter 21-26. I'll give you the martial technique I promised you. Su Yi smiled. Wang Shangwu suddenly understood that the black-clothed man was Su Yi. Looking at Su Yi's smiling face, Wang Shangwu laughed. The two of them looked at each other and laughed loudly as if there was no one else around. Su Yi's voice was even louder as he said softly, "Do you remember everything I taught you? Ha ha, it's not that easy. I'm not you." A wild smile flashed across Wang Shanwu's face. Then, Wang Shanwu stopped laughing and straightened his face. He said loudly, "Do your best. Watch carefully. What does he know? This guy knows it in such a short time? What martial technique did Wen Yuan teach him? Isn't the Origin Void Realm bound to lose against the Origin Emperor Realm? Is the Yuqian Palace here to be funny?" Below the stage, dozens of more confused eyes were cast on Su Yi and Wang Shanwu. The people of Yuqian Palace were also confused, not knowing what the two of them were up to. Only Dan Honggong and Wen Yuan looked calm. They straightened their chests and were ready to enjoy a battle that was bound to be won. Boom! With a loud explosion, Wang Shanwu rushed onto the stage like a ferocious beast in human form. On the stage, Wang Shanwu was facing Lu Yi. Lu Xian went down to rest for a while to prepare for the battle with Wen Yuan later. Lu Yi retracted his gaze from Su Yi and stared at Wang Shanwu's faint aura flow. Wang Shanwu's eyes were full of spirit. His bulging muscles were like armor. He was not afraid of his soul energy of the 8th level Origin Emperor Realm. Lu Yi's heart skipped a beat. It's a little different, but so what? A piece of trash will always be a piece of trash. Lu Yi tapped his chin and looked at Wang Shanwu, whose aura had changed with disdain. Learning martial arts on the eve of battle? Isn't it a little too late? In the end, you're still a piece of trash. You can't even reach the Origin Emperor Realm. Trash that gets bullied by me wherever you go. In the face of Lu Yi's censure, Wang Shanwu's expression was very calm. His eyes were very calm as he lightly shrugged his shoulders and said, "Let's begin. You talk too much nonsense. Today, I will prove in front of everyone that an Origin Void Realm martial artist can still defeat you today." Bang! In an instant, Lu Xian's robe fluttered behind him. His eyes turned from cold to murderous. The water attribute Yuan Qi in his hands quickly circulated, and a majestic energy instantly permeated the entire space. With the example of Lu Xian, Lu Yi did not dare to be careless even when facing an opponent like Wang Shanwu, whose cultivation was much lower than his. Not only because Wang Shanwu's body exuded an extraordinary domineering aura, but also because Wang Shanwu was the brother of that strange Wen Yuan, who had taught him mysterious martial arts. Just now, Wen Yuan had casually separated Mu Renjia and Lu Xian. Such an understatement action. Lu Yi admitted that he could not do it. Therefore, although Lu Yi's words were tough, it did not mean that he would really underestimate Wang Shanwu. Lu Yi tightly grasped the two silver-white short hammers in his hands and said loudly, "Then go to hell. Let's see how much progress you have made as a disciple of Jutian Palace." Just as Lu Yi's voice fell, Lu Yi waved the silver short hammers and pounced towards Wang Shanwu, with a surge of soul energy and Yuan Qi aura, causing the space to tremble and sweep across the sky. Qi-la! The mist that filled the sky suddenly raised a faint ice crystal that traversed across the entire arena. When Lu Yi rapidly approached Wang Shanwu's figure actually did not move. Lu Yi's eyes were instantly filled with excitement, and a huge force smashed towards Wang Shanwu's head. This guy, why is he so stupid? Is an Origin Void Realm really going to fight an Origin Emperor Realm expert head-on? Sitamu frowned and looked at Dan Honggong and Su Yi from the corner of his eyes. None of them showed any fear, so he could only keep quiet and continue to observe the arena. Clang! Under such a terrifying attack from Lu Yi, everyone present was flabbergasted. They were quite surprised. At the same time, when the giant hammers fell, Wang Shanwu crossed his hands and protected above his head, using his arms to forcefully withstand the Origin Emperor Realm's attack. The huge shockwave directly distorted the space, and with an extremely fast force, it formed a huge whirlpool of storm. Suddenly, Wang Shanwu's face flushed red from the violent attack. The ferocious force caused Wang Shanwu's knees to bend by half an inch, and Wang Shanwu shouted, "Huh! The energy of the ninth level origin void realm spread out from the whirlpool. At this moment, Wang Shangwu's eyes began to be suffused with blood color, and the tattered clothes on his body burst open as if they were being torn apart by someone. They were shredded into pieces and dissipated in the air. Wang Shangwu pushed his hands upwards, and his feet stepped on the rock-like yin-yang limitless stage, creating a small gap. His entire body was instantly blown away by the strong wind, and his figure retreated explosively, leaving a long mark on the high stage. And then he slowly stood up. Shaking his wrist forcefully, Wang Shangwu looked around the stage, and everyone's expression was beyond shocked. No one would have thought that there was actually someone who could withstand the attack of an Origin Emperor realm with his body, not to mention the difference of so many levels, even if it was just one round. Wang Shangwu's chest violently rose and fell like a bellows, and he wiped the sweat on his forehead and smiled at Su Yi below the stage. "It's fine, continue." Su Yi's gaze was calm, and he nodded faintly, indicating Wang Shangwu to go all out and counterattack. Immediately, Wang Shangwu's eyes revealed a fierce light, and he bent down and opened his arms towards Lu Yi like a bull that was pouncing out, and he said angrily, "The strength you usually use to hit me is stronger than this. What's wrong with you today? Are you a woman? Or are you shy? Just hit me as much as you want." Ha ha! Once again, there was a burst of laughter, and even Dan Ruxian and Mu Ling covered their mouths and laughed nonstop. "Good boy. You have some of my demeanor back then. Lose the battle, but don't lose the battle. Hold on for 30 breaths, and I will reward you greatly." Sitamu laughed until his beard trembled, and his eyes intentionally or unintentionally glanced at the gloomy Lu Ti. "Sect Master Situ, Yutian Palace has plenty of treasures." Dan Honggong also laughed and scolded, obviously very satisfied with Su Yi's choice of candidate. On the stage, Lu Yi was stunned by Wang Shangwu's physical resistance, and then he laughed angrily, his eyes filled with killing intent, and said hatefully, "You're courting death." The water attribute energy spread out again, and under the surrounding energy, Lu Yi closed his eyes slightly, and when he opened them again, his figure suddenly rose into the air. Majestic water vapor poured down from the sky, and Lu Yi's figure instantly transformed into a murderous afterimage. Chapter 21-27. Boom, boom, boom. In the blink of an eye, the surrounding space trembled as countless beams of light filled with killing intent rained down on Wang Shangwu's body. The space suddenly turned dark. Lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled in the sky behind him. Countless rays of light rained down on Wang Shangwu. A ferocious earth attribute energy condensed around Wang Shangwu's body. What kind of technique is this? Everyone was shocked. Lu Yi's murderous gaze was a little surprised. Is this guy trying to resist my attack with his physical body? At this moment, Wang Shangwu closed his eyes. The earth attribute energy gradually formed a huge whirlpool that wrapped around him. Even though Lu Yi's attack was like a terrifying blade that was cutting his flesh, Wang Shangwu, who didn't have any offensive martial skills, still chose to resist. He gritted his teeth and persevered on the spot. 15 breaths left. Qin Ru's voice resounded in the air and was soon annihilated by the storm. Everyone at the scene stared at Wang Shangwu, who was squatting down. The earth attribute energy carried the sky, full of energy attacks like a giant that was holding up heaven and earth. Soon, the high platform became distorted due to the collision of energy. Bang! Bang! In the solidified void, there were continuous sonic booms, accompanied by Wang Shangwu's heart-wrenching cries of pain. The miserable cries of pain made Dan Honggong, Sitamu, Lu Ti, and the others frown. Su Yi, who was closest to the high platform, had a solemn look in his eyes. "Fatty, whether you can reach the Origin Emperor realm or not depends on this. Hang in there." Su Yi muttered. Boom! The boundless water attribute attacks didn't stop for a moment. Soon, the space was in chaos and the weather changed. Amidst the chaos, Wang Shangwu's earth-shattering roar ended. Immediately after, boundless soul aura gushed out from the high platform without any reservation. The soul fluctuation was so horrifying that it filled the sky. Did he lose? That young man still lost in the end? The Yin family is really too powerful. Fighting against an 8th-level origin emperor is ultimately too difficult. Seeing this scene, everyone in the sky sighed again and again. Some of them even turned their heads away, full of grief. Everyone knew that Wang Shangwu had done his best. To be able to resist for so long with his flesh and blood body was a miracle in itself. Dan Honggong, Sita Mu, and the others sighed deeply and looked helplessly at Su Yi. The latter raised his hands and said, "Qin Ru, announce the time." 30 breaths. Just in time. Qin Ru's tone was pale and powerless. When a mist fell, everyone couldn't help but look at the expected result. In an instant, everyone was shocked. Their gazes were fixed on the figure on the high platform. On the limitless yin-yang platform, Wang Shangwu stood upright. From his neck to his lower abdomen, numerous profound and unfathomable golden runes spread across his body. His entire body seemed to have grown larger in an instant. "This, you won?" He won. The little guy won. Everyone found Lu Yi, who had collapsed at the side of the platform, and finally confirmed the result. Suddenly, the entire martial arts hall was in an uproar. Many experts were cheering as if they had witnessed a miracle. Tears streamed down their faces as they hugged each other. At this moment, the Limitless Sect and Yutian Palace looked as if they had joined hands to defeat the Yun family. Their faces were brimming with excitement. "Brother, I won." On the high platform, Wang Shangwu slowly raised his head. He didn't have the slightest bit of naivety. His eyes were lively, and his determined face revealed a terrifying, domineering aura that looked down on the world. "Su Yi, you must have taught him the Spirit Emperor tyrannical sealing force of the Earth attribute martial arts technique, right? The user can stack the energy in his body as he defends against a number of attacks. In the end, he can explode and kill his opponent." Su Yi smiled slightly. The only person in the world who could understand him was the tenant in this body. Starting from the Holy Mountain Academy, Su Yi's mysterious space was filled with all kinds of strange martial arts techniques. However, compared to the Origin Supreme technique and Tianyuan ancient scripture, no matter how strong they could not attract Su Yi's interest. Among the many martial arts techniques, Su Yi was only interested in the Emperor-grade martial arts technique, Spirit Emperor Tyrannical Sealing Force. However, the Earth attribute was not his Yuan Qi attribute, so it was stranded there. Now, it seemed that it was definitely tailor-made for Wang Shangwu's tyrannical battle physique. Umos Z knew, Chapter E% Section Supra Zero, just now, relying on the tyrannical battle physique and the Earth attribute defensive energy. Wang Shangwu kept accumulating energy from the outside world to help him break through to the Origin Emperor realm in one fell swoop. He even used an instant of explosive attack to defeat Lu Yi. Behind him, Dan Honggong and Situ Mu rushed up at the same time. They looked at Wang Shangwu in the sky like a god of war with their round eyes. They looked as if they had seen a ghost, and said to Su Yi beside them, "The little guy broke through? Origin Emperor realm?" Not only did he resist the attack of the Origin Emperor realm, but he also broke through in one fell swoop. Such a strange thing made everyone present dumbfounded. Hearing that, Lu Ti and the gloomy Lu Xian also rushed up. Lu Ti shook his head and said, "Within 3 days, he broke through multiple levels and directly reached the Origin Emperor realm. Who still dares to say that Shangwu is mediocre?" With a pained expression, Lu Ti shook his head incessantly. Su Yi's cold eyes looked behind him and said, "Lord Lu Ti, it's not you who has lost a genius. It's the entire Yun clan who has lost a terrifying genius. Shangwu's trip to the Yun family was honorable. He will prove how foolish your decision was, and how high he will go." There was a hidden meaning in his words. Lu Ti and Qin Ru looked at each other. They had always felt sorry for Wang Shanwu. Hearing Su Yi's words, they immediately thought of the day when they were deep in the mountains and felt something strange. Suddenly, there was an undetectable fluctuation in the depths of Lu Ti's eyes. He looked at Su Yi in front of him in disbelief. Could he be the expert hidden in the depths of the mountains that day? Bullshit. Wen Yuan, you taught Wang Shanwu a secret skill in front of everyone. You must have used some trick to defeat Lu Yi. Lu Xian frowned and shouted angrily. In an instant, pairs of cold eyes gathered on Lu Xian. Dan Honggong and Sita Mu's surprise also turned into coldness. If you can't control your mouth, I don't mind teaching you a lesson on behalf of Lord Lu Ti. Sita Mu's eyes were fierce as he said gloomily. Now that Lu Xian and Lu Yi have been defeated, the Yun family's way of doing things is to refuse to admit defeat. Dan Honggong's body was surrounded by a strong wave of qi, and his face was gloomy. Wang Shanwu's victory had greatly increased the reputation of Yuqin Palace. From the bottom of his heart, Dan Honggong had already regarded this young man as one of his own. Insulting Wang Shanwu was the same as insulting himself. Dan Honggong's killing intent immediately became clear. Bang! Chapter 21-28. The current Wang Shanwu had a dignified appearance. His body was straight, and his bearing was very lazy. While his chin was raised high, his limbs and bones were shrouded in a kind of inexplicable domineering aura, making the people around him not dare to approach. Hearing Lu Xian's question, Wang Shanwu looked at the former indifferently and raised his eyebrows. If you're not convinced, you can fight with me again. As he spoke, an unmoving, mighty aura rushed out, causing the hearts of the people present to tremble. This kind of natural, wild, and domineering aura caused the hearts of the people present to tremble as they took a deep breath. In the distance, Mu Renjie seemed to be lost in thought as he gazed at Wang Shanwu, who was a head taller than him, and he was filled with astonishment. This young man that he clearly saw and didn't seem remarkable was actually able to defeat Lu Yi. He lowered his head and muttered, "Is this really the aura of the Origin Emperor stage? Why is it so fierce?" Enough! A loud shout was heard, and the noisy surroundings instantly quieted down. Lu Ti, who had been silent all this time, looked around and looked at Wang Shanwu with a strange expression. He nodded, his eyes filled with deep appreciation. I hereby announce that Mu Renjie, Wang Shanwu, and Wen Yuan are the three people who can enter the Yun clan to gain experience. Lu Ti's words slowly fell. Every word was sonorous and forceful, and the sound waves that shook the heavens resounded in every corner. Hearing this, Lu Yi on the stage was immediately dissatisfied. He straightened his neck and roared at the audience. Lu Ti, we haven't fought with Wen Yuan yet. What are you announcing? Hearing this result, everyone's eyes fell on Su Yi. The final result was that this Wen Yuan won without a fight. Dan Ruxian, Mu Ling, and Mu Renjie, who were standing to the side, smiled happily when they heard the news. In the eyes of the three of them, this man was already a trustworthy companion. Great, Sister Ling, Brother Renjie. Hearing Dan Ruxian's cheers, Mu Ling shook her head and smiled bitterly. This little girl's face changed faster than the weather. Hearing the result, Wang Shanwu was also very surprised. He immediately ran to Su Yi and stopped the rolling tears in his eyes. He also swallowed the two words Su Yi that was stuck in his chest. He was very excited. Great! We can go to the Yun family together. We can go to the Yun family together. Wang Shanwu's fierce expression once again became pure in front of Su Yi. The sincerity between his brows could not be dispersed. In the eyes of the crowd, such a domineering person was like a little boy in front of Wen Yuan. This caused Lu Ti to be even more surprised. Reaching out his palm, Lu Ti's solemn expression slightly suppressed the noisy cheers on the field. He stared coldly at the two brothers, Lu Xian and Lu Yi. You, Ti. Know your place. If the two of you die here today, how can I explain it to your grandfather and the patriarch? Lu Ti's voice was stern, and the weight of his words was self-evident. Lu Ti's tolerance and leniency along the way was all for the sake of these two brothers' ancestors. When these words came out, Dan Hongong and Sitamu's eyes lit up. Lu Ti's words were also for them to hear. The current situation was definitely not what the Yun family wanted. He hoped that the two families would not be worried about the Yun family in the future. This Lu Ti's words are watertight, so natural to shift the blame. Su Yi's heart moved. It seemed that Lu Ti would be the key to entering the Yun family and understanding the situation. At this point, the hearts of the people present were like mirrors. Even if Lu Yi and Lu Xian worked together, they would not be able to hurt Wen Yuan. Lu Ti was giving them a way out, but they did not appreciate it. Instantly, the gazes of all the experts towards these two outstanding geniuses of the Yun clan changed from cold to disdain and contempt. Good. Very good. Lu Xian flew up to the stage and lifted the battered Lu Yi. His lips curled into a hideous smile as he nodded at Lu Ti and Su Yi. Wen Yuan, remember, today's matter is not over yet. Let's see how you can stir up trouble in the Yun family. Let's go. With a loud shout, Lu Xian led Lu Yifei out of the martial arts hall under the cold gaze of the crowd. They rushed out of the door. Why only a genuine at? Bi-Chi. His you are all pirates 0-inch, sir, this. Qinru looked at Lu Ti with some difficulty. Don't care about them. If it weren't for the power of their elders, I would have dealt with them long ago. This is a good ending. If there is anything, I will take responsibility when we go back. Lu Ti was also not in a good mood, his brows furrowed. Then Lu Ti, who had regained his composure, walked to Wang Shangwu's side with a smile. Shangwu, congratulations. You made the right choice. I am happy for you. Wang Shangwu scratched his head and looked shyly at Su Yi beside him. Su Yi smiled faintly and said to Lu Ti, Sir Lu Ti, you also made the right choice. Hearing this, Lu Ti smiled bitterly and shook his head. With his hands behind his back, a faint trace of worry flashed between his brows. All this was seen by Dan Hongong, Sitamu, and Dan Hongong. They were afraid that Lu Ti would be in big trouble when he went back. Since things had come to this, there was no use in regretting it. Then let's set off tomorrow morning. There are only a few days before the Great Despair opens. Lu Ti looked serious and nodded to Mu Renjia, Wen Yuan, and Su. The three of them all understood tacitly, and their eyes were filled with different fiery emotions. After that, there were some simple congratulations and small talk. The one who benefited the most from this election competition was Dan Hongong. Dan Hongong, who was grinning from ear to ear, proudly led Su Yi, Dan Ruxian, and the others back to the palace amidst everyone's congratulations. Amazing. This was incredible. Overlord Battlebody, I can even enter the Yun family to cultivate again. In the future, there will be no place for Situmu, that old man, to be so arrogant in the boundless world. Dan Hongong was talking to himself along the way and was extremely excited. Only Su Yi could understand Dan Hongong's feelings. Everyone looked at Dan Hongong, who was depressed for a few months, suddenly as if he was possessed and was overjoyed. They were all stunned. The overjoyed Dan Hongong even gave up his alchemy room for Su Yi and Wang Shangwu to rest while he led the imperial palace to prepare for the trip to the Yun family tomorrow. In the quiet room, Wang Shangwu, who had recovered his physique, hugged Su Yi tightly and refused to let go. You bastard! You threw your sister to me. I almost died. You almost made me acknowledge you as my master. You're such a jerk. Wang Shangwu, who was no longer the same as before, hugged Su Yi tightly, causing Su Yi to feel some pain. However, this pain made Su Yi feel sweet in his heart. Chapter 21-29. Hearing this, Wang Shanwu wiped away the tears at the corner of his eyes and completely told Su Yi about the Yun family's matters. Is that old man Zhongli's daughter? Hearing Wang Shanwu's long-winded rambling, Su Yi suddenly stood up. Wang Shangwu, who also stood up, nodded his head. He instantly felt that the situation was far more complicated than he imagined. Su was actually the Yun family's youngest daughter who wandered outside. For so many years, the Yun family had always been searching for traces of Su Wan-er. Then what about Yun Jing? Is she in the Yun family? Su-yi said with a trembling voice. Yun Jing is the Yun family's eldest daughter. However, ever since I entered the Yun family, I have never seen Miss Yun Jing's face. Until one day, I heard from the Yun family that Yun Jing's disappearance was related to you. From then on, I was also forbidden from meeting Wan-er and could only do odd jobs in the Yun family. Speaking up to here, Wang Shangwu's tone gradually sank, and he unconsciously clenched his fists tightly. Bang! Suddenly sitting down, somewhat absent-minded in panic, Su-yi murmured softly. Then that means, even after entering the Yun family, I can't see Yun Jing. You and Yun Jing are really together? Wang Shangwu was somewhat surprised. Looking at Su-yi's absent-minded appearance, he naturally understood the importance of Yun Jing to Su-yi. The room instantly quieted down, and Wang Shangwu also sighed. After a long while, Wang Shangwu finally opened his mouth and said, Su-yi, don't worry. Recently, the entire Yun family has been busy with the Nightmare Sea despair matter. Even the family head who misses the eldest daughter is involved in it. Perhaps Miss Yun Jing's whereabouts are inside. Taking a deep breath, he naturally knew that Wang Shangwu was comforting him. Now, he could only enter the Yun family first to know Yun Jing's whereabouts. I hope none of this has anything to do with the Long family. Suddenly, Su-yi's eyes were suffused with coldness that penetrated the heart, and it caused Wang Shangwu, who sat nearby, to feel a chill in his heart. The next day, Su-yi tossed and turned throughout the night. Apart from breathing, he also cultivated. He didn't want to stop at all. After waking up early in the morning, he went out with Wang Shangwu. At the plaza in front of Juqian Palace, the members of Limitless Heavenly Imperial were already waiting. The gale white jade condor he saw that day was even more majestic. Its huge beak was filled with the medicinal herbs they had gathered this time. Lu Ti and Qin Ru were standing to the side, looking at Su-yi and Wang Shangwu with a smile. Shangwu, this is the medicinal pill I prepared for you. Now that you and Wen Yuan are here, don't be reluctant to use them. Also, this is a native attribute royal grade martial skill collected by Juqian Palace. Also, this sea-collapsing armor and Heavenly Soul 5-element hammer have both reached the middle stage of Earth grade. While speaking, Dan Honggong stuffed a huge space bag into Wang Shangwu's arms, nagging as if he was telling his grandson that he was going on a long journey. Inside the bag were also the medicinal pills that were tailor-made for Wang Shangwu. Feeling the long-awaited care, Wang Shangwu's eyes filled with tears. His huge body trembled slightly as he said, Master, how could I? It turned out that yesterday, Dan Honggong had held a disciple acceptance ceremony for Wang Shangwu without stopping. At this time, Wang Shangwu had officially become the last disciple of Limitless Heavenly Imperial Palace. Humph, you gave away all the treasures. What can I use? Dan Ru Xin glared at him, pretending to be angry. What do you know? If you can win face for me like Shangwu, I will pass all my belongings to you. Dan Honggong glared at his granddaughter, then put his hand to his mouth and said in a low voice, These things should have been handed over to the headquarters. It is not a loss to give them to you. Don't be reluctant to use them. Su-yi knew that these words were naturally for Su-yi to hear. He could not help but shake his head and smile bitterly. This old guy really had a good plan. Thinking about it, he also gave Wang Shangwu. After so many years, he owed him too much. Take them. We have to go too. Su-yi patted Wang Shangwu's shoulder, called Mu Renjia in the distance, and walked towards the storm-white jade condor. The three of them walked side by side, like warriors going to war. Under the fervent gaze of the crowd, they rode on the condor and left. Above the clear white clouds, there were only a few rapid spatial ripples. The shadows of the sky, the water, and the mountains became smaller and smaller until they could no longer be seen. Sitting on the condor was like sitting on a carriage. It was extremely fast but stable. Lu Ti stood on the head of the condor and directed them in the direction of the endless sky-sea region. His clothes fluttered in the wind. Standing in the middle, Su-yi closed his eyes and rested. At this moment, Mu-Renjia came over, looking at him curiously. "Wen Yuan, have I seen you before?" He slowly opened his eyes, maintaining an indifferent expression. Mu-Renjia's face was full of sincerity, without any intention of probing. Now that the three of them had formed a small team, they could be considered the only force in the Yun family. Su-yi said in a low voice, "I have also seen you before. You were at the Tianfeng ranking tournament. Then are you really the person I think you are?" Mu-Renjia glanced at him and nodded. He asked quietly with his Yuan Qi. The fluctuations in his eyes surged, showing his excitement. He then waited expectantly for Su-yi's answer. "Is it that important to be true or false? We could be teammates, so why do we need to care about the truth?" Su-yi said with his Yuan Qi. At this moment, Wang Shanwu heard the conversation between the two and sat down. His broad body took up almost half the space of a person. He said in a low voice, "If I drag you guys down, don't despise me." Su-yi and Mu-Renjia looked at each other and smiled. They both patted Wang Shanwu's shoulder. Lu Ti, who could vaguely hear their conversation, looked down at the mountains and rivers under his feet. He squinted his eyes and said, "This time, the despairs of the Black Sea is the most important training ground for the Yun family. The head of the family has opened the door to allow non-members of the Yun family to participate. You must perform well and not waste this opportunity." "Lord Lu Ti, what is in the despairs? Why is the head of the family so focused on it?" Wang Shangwu asked in a low voice. Lu Ti slowly raised his head and looked at the beautiful scenery below. He smiled and introduced it to Su-yi and the other two. The despairs of the Black Sea was a boundary space that would appear in the Yun family every few decades. It was said that there was an ancient continent inside, and it was extremely mysterious. As the rules of space changed, this space would gradually disappear from the real world. It would open for about 10 days each time. However, no one knew how long it had been formed and why it was formed. According to the description of the seniors who had entered, after the repeated evolution of the energy of heaven and earth, countless spiritual herbs, equipment, and martial skills left behind by the seniors and sages were found every time, which made people drool. The most fascinating part was that there was a kind of energy fragment inside. This fragment was called the Dark Sea Fragment. Chapter 2130. If these fragments were used properly, they could help an Origin Emperor realm martial artist break through to the Origin Ancestor realm quickly and improve the cultivation of Origin Ancestor realm experts. Some fragments even contained cultivation methods or martial techniques. In short, any one of these fragments would be a rare treasure in the outside world. This was the fundamental reason why the Yun family was able to stand tall and contend with the Long family. Lu Ti turned his head, his face full of yearning and longing. The depths of his eyes were filled with yearning for this mysterious territory. There is actually such a magical place. Wang Shanwu, who was a little dumbfounded, immediately showed a trace of longing in his eyes. These fragments are not everywhere. However, legend has it that there's a large nightmare sea in the depths of the impasse. Near the nightmare sea, there are countless of these fragments. Lu Ti became more and more excited as he spoke. He then turned around, his eyes full of expectation as he spoke in a low voice. "Sea of Nightmares." Su-yi's brows instantly turned serious. Lu Ti nodded. His eyes seemed to be recalling the scene when he had entered the impasse. He said in a low voice, "The Nightmare Sea is a sea that evokes one's inner desires. Legend has it that there are as many energy fragments as sparkling waves. However, at the same time, it is also a sea that can destroy your martial path dreams and send you to the underworld." His gaze fell on the wide river beneath his feet. Lu Ti's body trembled slightly. He paused for a moment and said, "Many martial artists enter the impasse to find the Nightmare Sea. But before they could find the sea, they died on the way. If you can see the White Bone Accumulation Road, you will know the direction of the nightmare sea. Huff huff. His voice was unusually gloomy. Other than Su Yi, Mu Renjia, Wang Shanwu, and Qin Ru's eyes trembled, revealing a trace of fear. Seeing that everyone was silent, Wang Shanwu grinned and said in a low voice, Aya, it's okay. Since it is so scary, we won't go to the nightmare sea. There are fragments in other places, even if the impasse isn't there. If we can find one fragment, it will be enough. If you can find a piece in 10 days, that's fine too. Turning his head, Lu Ti's expression instantly became extremely gloomy. His trembling pupils even carried some lingering fear. Impossible. No one can bring this fragment out. Back then, I had the same idea. I tried my best to find a fragment of the Dark Sea. However, I hadn't even touched it for half a day and hadn't even comprehended its profundity before the inner demon of martial Dao appeared in my heart. I almost lost my life there. Su Yi, Mu Renjia, and Wang Shangwu's eyes darkened. Even a fragment had such an effect. What kind of terrifying reaction would the Sea of Nightmare have? What is hidden in the Nightmare Sea? Even the fragments are so terrifying. Su Yi's cold divine essence spread out as he looked at Lu Ti. It's a demon. It could also be an ancient giant beast. It was even more likely that it was hiding an even more terrifying secret. Because no one has ever come close to that sea, no one knows. Lu Ti's throat moved. His elegant and calm face also became fearful. Since it's so terrifying, the Yin family still insists on letting their clansmen go in. It seems that the benefits inside are indeed astonishing. He stroked his chin. A voice that had been silent for a long time slowly came out from his body. That nightmare sea must be the product of the collapse of the immemorial great calamity. Think of a way to go in and take a look. The iron soulfish's voice came from the entrance before it disappeared again. At this moment, hearing the iron soulfish's voice, Su Yi's heart couldn't help but tremble. Ever since he had opened the divine, profound spirit veins, the iron soulfish had been in hibernation for longer and longer periods of time. Now, for the legendary Nightmare Sea, it had actually spoken. This place would definitely have an unexpected harvest. While Su Yi was deep in thought, Lu Ti handed over a withered vine that was suffused with a lustrous luster. It was covered in a faint film of light, and the dense radiance had preserved the medicinal aura very well. This is the vein-opening vine. Su Yi's eyes lit up as he looked at Lu Ti. I heard from Qin Ru that you want this thing, Lu Ti said with a smile. Qin Ru, who was beside him, also bent over and chuckled. After receiving the vein-opening vine, the corner of Su Yi's mouth immediately curled up. He had completely forgotten about this matter when the selection started. You won first place in this selection and taught those two brats a lesson. Consider this my gift to you, Lu Ti said. Su Yi stroked the vein-opening vine and put it into his interspatial bag. With this, only the snow tobacco and spirit-nourishing mud were left with the jade spring-bone refining pill that his master used to restore meridians. Lu Ti narrowed his eyes slightly and lowered his head to look at Su Yi. He faintly continued, As for the snow tobacco and spirit-nourishing mud, I've seen them in the despairs of the Nightmare Sea. Oh, a trace of joy flashed through Su Yi's eyes again, but it quickly turned into a frown. He sized up Lu Ti and immediately felt that Lu Ti was being a little too attentive. Why are you telling me this? Ha ha ha. Lu Ti stroked his beard and laughed. You didn't really make a move this time, but I know your true strength. Once you enter the Yun family and the Nightmare Sea, you'll definitely cause an earth-shattering commotion. However, when that time comes, don't forget that I'm the one. Su Yi crossed his arms in front of his chest and immediately understood what Lu Ti meant. Lu Ti was a smart person. In a sect like this, if one didn't have any backing, one could only size up the situation and always think for oneself. Paving the way for oneself in advance was a habitual trick of people like Lu Ti. Lu Ti wasn't a bad person, but he was definitely a smart person. Smart people naturally like to talk to smart people. Of course, I'll try my best. Su Yi's eyes trembled as he smiled knowingly. Soon enough, The few of them rode on the tempest white jade condor and arrived above the endless sky ocean. Several thick white clouds were guarding this area of the ocean like guards. Above the void, the white jade condor spread its wings and suddenly accelerated into the clouds. Screech! The beast's cry shook the sky, and the terrifying sound waves shattered the ripples in the surrounding air. Immediately, several white clouds rushed together and gathered into the shape of a door. The wind whistled as the surrounding energy rapidly gathered towards the cloud door. He stood on the white jade condor and immediately felt a large wave of aura surging towards him. Boom! In the clear sky, Lu Ti's hands moved, and a vast pressure descended on this part of the world. Dazzling light poured out from the cloud door. Circulate your yuan qi and protect your heart and soul, Lu Ti shouted. In an instant, the entire ocean seemed to be enlarged. Everyone on the white jade condor felt small and insignificant. The vigorous pressure made everyone close their eyes, and the white jade condor spread its wings again. Swish! Swish! With the white jade condor as the center, the space suddenly collapsed, accompanied by the sound of lightning and thunder. When traveling through space, except for Lu Ti, everyone closed their eyes. Only he had his eyes open, and the golden radiance around his body was constantly surging, as calm as usual. This guy, who the hell is he? How can he have such a strong soul energy? Lu Ti, who was trying his best to control the white jade condor, saw Suyi's calm expression, and his heart trembled. After experiencing the space-time storm, this kind of space travel was child's play for Suyi. At this time, Suyi opened his eyes because he wanted to remember the route to the Yun family. This trip to the Yun family could be said to be dangerous, so he had a plan ahead. Chapter 21:31. Swish! In the middle of a boundless valley, there was a large pile of lotus flowers in full bloom. It was quiet and elegant. A silvery ray of light whizzed down from the ninth heaven. Within the ray of light, a few silvery white shadows were blurry and dreamy. The pitch-black space tunnel suddenly disappeared when the silhouettes landed in midair. The ones who flew down were Suyi and the others from the boundless land. Chirp, chirp. In midair, the gale white jade condor let out a clear chirp. The huge lotus flowers below seemed to have a mind of their own as they shifted their position and came to the area below Suyi and the others. Then, the white jade condor flapped its wings again. Its huge body stirred up layers of spatial ripples in the surrounding space before it disappeared into a cloud of smoke. Several huge space bags in its beak seemed to have received an order as they landed on the pile of lotus flowers one after another. Without support, Suyi and the others frowned. They twisted their bodies in the air, and energy rays shot out from their bodies as they executed their movement techniques. The three of you go to that pile of lotus flowers. Qin-Ru and I will go to that one. Lu Ti raised his eyebrows and said to Suyi, swish, swish. Then a ray of light shot out from Lu Ti's hand and caught Qin-Ru. The two of them landed steadily on a pile of lotus flowers. The lotus petals trembled slightly, shaking up countless pink light spots. It was filled with spiritual energy and was quite beautiful. On the other side, Suyi and Mu Renji each took one side. They dragged Wang Shangwu, who did not have any movement techniques, and landed on a bigger pile of lotus flowers. 1 yuan. This is the 9 lotus pond of the Yun family. It can take you to 9 different places in the Yun family. Shangwu will explain the details to you. Lu Ti smiled and pointed at the huge lotus flowers in the pond as he introduced them to Suyi. Then, Lu Ti glanced at Wang Shangwu and said in a low voice, Shangwu, bring 1 yuan and Mu Renjia to your residence first. After Qin-Ru and I hand over the herbs, we will arrange for you to participate in the competition. Wang Shangwu nodded and cupped his hands with a smile. Lord Lu Ti, does the Yun family still have a place for me to stay? This time, the Yun family wanted to expel Wang Shangwu from the Yun family. Now, There was no place for Wang Shangwu to settle down. Hearing this, Lu Ti was a little embarrassed. He smiled embarrassedly and said, "The expulsion this time was not the intention of everyone in the ancient sect." He lowered his voice and said softly, "It was only the intention of a few elders. Naturally, no one will snatch your residence. You go first. I believe that when you come back this time, you will definitely surprise everyone." Shifting his gaze from Wang Shangwu to Su Yi, Lu Ti led Qin Ru northwest. Seeing that Lu Ti had walked far away, Su Yi and Mu Rinda walked over to Wang Shangwu, who was most familiar with this place. "I'll listen to you from now on. Su Yi and I will be relying on you to take care of us." Mu Rinja's eyes lit up as he raised his eyebrows and said, "You? How did you know?" Looking at Su Yi and then looking at Mu Rinja, Su Yi did not seem surprised that Mu Rinja would directly say Su Yi's name. "Let's go. This guy saw through it long ago. But after entering the Yun family, it's better to call me when you on. The Yun family seems to be very complicated." Su Yi patted Wang Shangwu's shoulder and took a deep breath. His eyes glanced at the vast nine-lotus pond. "That's right. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. The three of us must be honest with each other in order to reap the rewards." Mu Rinja blinked his eyes, and a trace of light flashed in his bright eyes. In the pond, more than 10 huge black shadows were like lurking pythons that slowly shuttled back and forth in the water. Looking at these hibernating behemoths, Su Yi's heart trembled slightly. Judging from their auras, these demonic beasts' auras were vigorous, and their cultivations were around the demon ancestor realm. Staring at these swimming demonic beasts, Su Yi's eyes trembled. If they did not accurately land on the lotus stacks, no matter how strong they would definitely become food for these beasts if they suddenly fell into the pond. "Yin family brats, hurry up and get in. Be careful that I don't eat you." Under the lotus pond, a fierce male voice came from underground. It was hoarse like a broken gong, causing one's soul to surge. Soon after, a few enchanting female voices also came up, like flies that burrowed into one's heart. "Little brothers, hurry up and get in, otherwise you'll have to accompany this servant. Looking at you, you're quite handsome. The lonely bottom of the pond is waiting for you. Hurry up and come. That place is full of smelly old men. Why don't you come down and save them?" Bang! With a burning face and a frown, Wang Shangwu twisted the seal in his hand. Waves of vigorous white smoke rose from the lotus stacks under his feet, and he immediately headed northwest. The lotus stacks moved quickly, and the other lotus stacks beside him instantly opened up a path. The lotus stacks carrying the three of them sped away, leaving a large ripple in the quiet and clear water. Those demonic beasts just now, if released, would probably be experts. Mu Rinja clicked his tongue in wonder as he listened to the unending laughter behind him. The lingering fear on his face had not disappeared. Wang Shangwu's face was also boiling hot. It was obvious that the voices just now had a huge soul pressure, which was also a test for ordinary warriors. This 9-lotus formation is not only the entrance of a Yun family, but also used to suppress these evil beasts. If any Yun family disciple makes a mistake, they will be thrown in directly. Wang Shangwu panted as large beads of sweat flowed down from the corners of his mouth. Su Yi, who was beside him, was constantly using the art of driving the heavens. His eyes were clear and bright, as if he was not affected at all. He nodded and said, "This Yin family's methods are really powerful. It seems that this Yin family has many mysterious places. The Limp Sea is a desolate place. We must go in and take a look." As they spoke, the lotus stack's speed became faster and faster. After leaving the lotus pond, they soared into the sky, brushing past the forest like lightning, and passed by several mountain peaks. At this time, Su Yi finally realized how big the Yun family was. Compared to the top forces, the Yun family's space was vast, and the spirit chi was pure. Wang Shangwu pointed at the ancient mountains and rivers below and explained to Su Yi about the Yun family structure and distribution, as well as the places to pay attention to. While sighing at the Yun family's enormous power, the three of them slowly landed in front of a thatched hut. "We're here," Wang Shangwu lightly shouted. After landing on the ground, the lotus stacks nodded at Wang Shangwu. Then the light dissipated. "You live here?" Su Yi and Mu Renjie were a little surprised. Compared to the beautiful buildings Su Yi saw along the way, the place where Wang Shangwu lived was trash. Wang Shangwu twirled his hair and was a little embarrassed. He smiled and said, "I'm not a member of the Yun family, so I can only live here. This place is a long distance from the outer palace, not to mention the inner palace. However, if I can go and listen to the elders' seminar, it's already very good." Su Yi and Mu Renjie were led into the hut. Although the inside of the thatched hut was simple, it was clean and tidy, giving people a simple feeling. Chapter 21:32. After sitting down, Su Yi frowned as he looked at the surroundings. He was furious and said, "Isn't one the daughter of Old Man Yin? How dare they treat you like this?" One was heavily protected by Old Man Yin. In the beginning, when one could still come to find me, it was true that others were wary of her. However, after I brought her back to Man City, one was grounded by the family head. I could only let others bully me. However, I got used to it after a long time. Wang Shangwu said as he poured tea for Su Yi and Mu Renjie and greeted them warmly. He brushed the dust off the table and said, "I know one doesn't like this place. If I leave, she will be even more lonely." Fatty Eye. Su Yi's heart was suddenly filled with guilt. Looking at this childhood friend of his who had taken on so many responsibilities for him, his heart suddenly sank. But it's different now. You are here. Sister Wan will be happy if she hears you. Wang Shanwu chuckled. His simple and honest face was filled with excitement. Su Yi's eyes also lit up as he nodded and said, "Will Wan also participate in the Desperation Sea? This time, all Origin Emperor experts below the age of 40 will participate in the Desperation Sea. Sister Wan will definitely participate. However, after not seeing her for so long, I wonder what realm she has reached. Origin Emperor experts below the age of 40. Hearing Wang Shangwu's words, Mu Renjie and Su Yi raised their eyebrows again. Rumble. At this moment, a huge crashing sound suddenly resounded outside. It was like the sound of quarreling, which attracted the attention of Su Yi and the rest. "What's going on outside?" Su Yi, Wang Shangwu, and Mu Renjie stood up and looked outside through the gap of the thatched hut. They saw a crazy old man standing in front of the hut. He was staggering as he said to two black-robed disciples, "What are you doing?" "This is Shangwu. Shangwu's place." "Crazy old man, get out of my way." Wang Shangwu has already been chased out of the Yun family, so this place will only be a burden. For the next few days, this will be the training ground of our Rickamon sect, a disciple said with a slanted smile. "Patriarch, you won't." "The Patriarch won't." The crazy old man bared his fangs and brandished his claws. His clothes were tattered, and he pointed his dirty finger at the young disciple. "Take care of yourself. If it wasn't for the Patriarch being kind enough to let you stay, the elders wouldn't lower themselves to your level. Otherwise, you'd end up like that ant." Bang! As the young disciple spoke, a cloud-white sword chi appeared in his hand. The sharp edge of the sword pierced through the air, causing a sharp sound of wind being torn apart as it blasted towards the crazy old man. "Stinking brat, I'll fight it out with you." Looking at the oncoming sword chi, the crazy old man raised his dirty hands and rushed towards the sword chi. "Do you want to die?" Even Patriarch Feng Bo doesn't dare to move. The other disciple shouted at the disciple who attacked, following which a palm print shot out from his palm. The sword wave and the palm print collided violently in the air. Boundless soul energy instantly exploded into a circular shockwave. Feng Bo's feet spun, and the shockwave sent Feng Bo crashing to the ground. His skinny body exploded on the ground, causing a muffled sound. They didn't expect Feng Bo to suddenly rush over, causing the two young disciples to be startled. Feng Bo, Wang Shangwu's eyes immediately turned scarlet. He was about to rush over, but he was stopped by Su Yi and Mu Renjie. "Who's outside?" Su, he said with a frown. Seems like they should be people from Rickamon. Wang Shangwu's anger immediately soared. He somewhat impatiently said to Su Yi, "In the Yun family, the Inner Palace disciples have their own gangs. Liu Xian and Liu Yi are from Rickamon. The leaders of the gangs are all core disciples of some elders." Soon after, Wang Shangwu told Su Yi that the leader of Rickamon, Liu Linxian, was one of Yun Jing's admirers. Therefore, Liu Linxian blamed Su Yi for Yun Jing's disappearance to a large extent. Wang Shangwu is Su Yi's good friend, so he naturally became the target of the attack. My place is so far from the Inner Palace. Using this place as a training ground, bullshit. Wang Shangwu's body was engulfed in a fiery wind, his anger soaring to the sky. Stroking his chin and looking at Fengbo, who was lying on the ground, Su Yi said in a low voice, "That means they're using this opportunity to show off their strength. Are they looking for trouble with me? Let's go out and take a look." Su Yi said in a low voice, his voice filled with killing intent. Suddenly, 3 ferocious auras rushed out from the thatched hut. The strong wind that came from it caused the 2 Rickamon disciples to retreat. Fengbo. Wang Shangwu's face was calm as he helped Fengbo up. His eyes were filled with grief and indignation. Seeing Wang Shangwu, Fengbo's dirty mouth revealed a trace of a brilliant smile and said, "Shangwu, I knew you wouldn't leave. These 2 stinking brats are lying. Aren't they country bumpkins? They actually dare to come back." Seeing the person who came, the Rickamon disciples became bolder and coldly said, "Say sorry to him." Su Yi's gaze was like iron. His low voice was like thunder. A ferocious aura surged out from Su Yi's body. Instantly, half of the space behind him was filled with a sharp killing intent. In an instant, Fengbo and the 2 Rickamon disciples looked at the young man who suddenly appeared with burning eyes. "What did you just say?" Su Yi's domineering aura was incomparably arrogant. The 2 Rickamon disciples were at a loss as to what to do. "Say sorry to this old man. This is the 2nd time." Standing at the side, Mu Renjia crossed his arms with a cold gaze. Instantly, the Rickamon disciples looked at each other and laughed as if they had heard the funniest joke. They sneered, "Brat, this is not the place for you to be so arrogant. This is the Yun family, and we are Rickamon disciples. Do you think you're a dragon among men just because you came to participate in the Desperate Straits Sea? Whether I am a dragon or not, you don't have the final say. Whether you are a worm or not, I have the final say." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Yi's figure shuddered. Behind him, a spatial ripple spread out. Within the spatial ripple, Su Yi's feet moved lightly. He dashed to the side of the 2 like a ghost. Bang! The pupils of the 2 shrunk. Their eyes were filled with horror. Before they could even open their mouths, they could feel Su Yi's ferocious killing intent gushing out. Su Yi's 2 hands were holding the neck of one of them. His deep eyes were like a bottomless abyss. So strong. Only now did the 2 realize Su Yi's strength. Their expressions changed drastically. As if their throats were being clamped, their empty eyes seemed to have sensed something. They immediately shrank. It was too late for them to resist. "Apologize to Wang Shanwu. Apologize to this old man. I won't repeat myself a 3rd time." Su Yi's eyes were like torches. The killing intent in his eyes made their hair stand on end. Bang! Su Yi waved his hand, and a sharp killing intent swept out. With a loud shout, the 2 disciples were swept up by a gust of wind and fell in front of Fengbo and Wang Shangwu. Chapter 21:33. The entire ground shook violently. The terrifying energy caused the 2 of them to spit out a mouthful of blood. When they turned around, the 2 disciples were dumbfounded. Their bodies were trembling as they looked back at Su Yi and said, "Brat, you have provoked us from Rickamon. Do you think you still want to participate in the impasse? Humiliating us. Have you thought of the consequences?" The 2 of them, who were trying to use Rickamon to scare Su Yi, curled their lips and said softly, "Kowtow." Su Yi's lazy eyes flashed again. He didn't care about what the 2 of them were saying. He stomped heavily on the ground, and a terrifying energy spread out. Instantly, the two young disciples knelt on the ground and knocked their heads heavily on the ground. After 3 consecutive sounds, Wang Shangwu and Mu Rinjia, who were standing in front of him, swallowed their saliva. They had never seen Su Yi in action before. The sudden violent move had already shocked the two of them so much that they couldn't keep their mouths shut. The 2 disciples in front of them were also in the Origin Emperor realm. Although their levels weren't high, they didn't even have the strength to fight back in front of Su Yi. As for Feng Bo, who was supported by Wang Shangwu, other than widening his eyes, there was a flash of surprise in his eyes. He immediately stared at Su Yi. "Wait! Stop!" In the distant sky, 2 familiar figures flew over. Lu Ti's speed was extremely terrifying. He rushed to the front of Su Yi in an instant. His face was filled with astonishment as he looked around and said, "Wen Yuan, you are in trouble. They are from Rickamon." "So what?" Su Yi frowned as he looked at the Rickamon disciples who were pressed on the ground and couldn't fight back. More contempt appeared in his eyes. "Let go first. Listen to me," Lu Ti said in a deep voice. Whoosh! The violent force moved away from the 2 disciples. The 2 disciples from Rickamon had their foreheads swollen up. They spat out a mouthful of blood. Obviously, they were seriously injured. "Lu Ti, these are the people you have chosen. Very good. I will report to senior brother Lin Xian. Let's see if your people can still stay here." Staring at Lu Ti and Su Yi, the 2 disciples spat out blood. After saying that, the 2 of them supported each other as the energy whirlpool under their feet rose up and they headed towards the inner palace. Looking at the Rickamon disciples leaving, Lu Ti's face instantly turned gloomy. After returning to the house, Lu Ti checked on Feng Bo's injuries and asked with concern, "Feng Bo, are you all right?" Those 2 disciples, of course, Yi. Looking at Su Yi in confusion, Lu Ti said to Su Yi, "Wen Yuan, this is Feng Bo. He has always been good to Shangwu. It's just that he often goes crazy. But the patriarch really takes good care of him. Wen Yuan." Feng Bo suddenly sat up. His eyes flickered violently. He repeated a few words and said, "Shangwu, is this the brother you were talking about?" Looking at the strange Feng Bo, Su Yi could naturally see that Feng Bo wasn't injured. For the first time, Su Yi felt like opening his heart. He nodded at Wang Shangwu. "That's right. This is the Su Yi that I always talk about. My good brother, Su Yi. He is also here to participate in the Desperation Realm." Wang Shangwu smiled and squatted down. His gaze landed on Su Yi. Looking at Feng Bo, who was indeed a little crazy, Su Yi had an indescribable feeling in his heart. It disappeared in a flash. He immediately greeted Feng Bo and said softly, "Feng Bo, thank you for taking care of Shangwu." Su Yi revealed a warm smile. It was so sincere that it made one's heart tremble. Feng Bo seemed to be infected by Su Yi's smile. His eyes gradually became moist. He suddenly stood up and said shakily, "It's too dangerous here. Too dangerous. Desperation isn't fun. Desperation isn't fun. Hurry up and leave." After speaking, Feng Bo rushed out of the door, leaving behind Su Yi and the others with a dumbfounded expression. "Sigh, Feng Bo is always like this, but he is still a good person." Wang Shangwu rubbed his nose and felt a little embarrassed. "Is that so?" Looking at Feng Bo, who disappeared in the dark night, Su Yi had a strange feeling in his heart. This person is very familiar. I feel like I have seen him before. "You are indeed Su Yi." Standing behind Su Yi, Lu Ti's expression changed. He nodded heavily. "Lord Lu Ti, if it is Su Yi, we should be able to succeed this time." Qinru was also very excited. She looked at Su Yi as if she was looking at her savior. Su Yi turned his head and looked at Lu Ti. He couldn't hide anything from Lu Ti, so he asked, "What success? Those 2 disciples don't seem to be afraid of you." Hearing this, Lu Ti glanced at Wang Shangwu and nodded helplessly. He said in a low voice, "This is what I need your help with. The Yun family has a long history. People like me are also outsiders. I only joined the Yun family later on. Those 2 disciples are from Rickamon. As a faction of the Inner Yard disciples, Rickamon is ranked in the top 10. Moreover, sects like the Lu clan also have their own elders supporting them. For example, Lu Xian and Lu Yi's grandfather is an elder of an ancient sect. Lu Linxian is the leader of Rickamon. Not to mention his cultivation, just his status alone is incomparable to that of an ordinary deacon. Lu Ti shrugged and revealed an awkward expression. Qinru walked to Su Yi and said in a low voice, "This time, the Limp Sea Impasse is also a test for Lord Lu Ti. The three of you will enter the Limp Sea Impasse. If one of you can get a good result and enter the top 10 of the Cloud Roll, Lord Lu Ti will be promoted directly from a deacon to an elder because of you. At that time, Lord Lu Ti won't have to be looked down upon by others." Wang Shangwu raised his eyes and looked carefree. The Cloud Roll was the ranking list of the Inner Yard disciples. Wang Shangwu had told him about it before. Su Yi's eyes flashed, and he said in a low voice, "Isn't the Limp Sea Impasse a training experience? How is it related to the Cloud Roll?" Lu Ti took a deep breath and nodded. He said in a low voice, "I heard from the people in the sect that the family head had a sudden idea, and the Cloud Roll will be carried out in the Limp Sea Impasse. If the three of you can enter the Cloud Roll, I will be promoted to an elder." Looking at Su Yi, Lu Ti said in a low voice, "However, safety is the priority. You have attracted the attention of Rickamon. You have to be careful. It's not important whether I can become an elder or not." Su Yi got first place in the Tianfeng ranking competition. This Cloud Roll should be easy for him. Mu Renjia looked at Su Yi in front of him and felt proud. Lu Ti smiled and looked at Mu Renjia and Su Yi. He said, "The aristocratic families don't participate in the Tianfeng ranking competition. This time, the aristocratic families are only training their young disciples. For example, the Yun family only sent Yun Liang to participate in the competition. They don't plan to stand out. Didn't the Long family only send the young Long Tsang to participate? The difference between the aristocratic families and the top forces isn't that simple. Take Lu Linxian, for example. He's only 27 or 28 years old, and he's ranked 8th on the Cloud Roll. He's already at the 4th level of Origin Zone stage." Chapter 21:34. It seems like the person on the Cloud Roll is quite powerful. Su Yi rubbed his chin and muttered to himself. Yun Liang was a level 6 Origin Royal Realm martial artist, and he could represent the Yun clan to participate in the Tianfeng ranking battle. As Su Yi thought about it, Long Ya's figure appeared in his mind again. As the great elder's granddaughter, she had reached level 6 Origin Ancestor Realm in her 20s. Comparing the two, the Long family's strength was obvious. The first place must be mine. Su Yi raised his brows and removed his disguise. He took a breath of cold air, and his eyes were filled with ruthlessness. Since so many people in the ancient sect hated him because of Yun Jing, he had to get the first place. It was not only to prove that Yun Jing's choice was right, but also to prepare for a confrontation with the Long family. Becoming stronger was a path that he had to go through. He had to get the first place on the Cloud Roll before he could ask Yun Zhongli about Yun Jing's whereabouts. In the house, Lu Ti, Mu Renjia, and the rest looked at Su Yi in a daze. They saw a wild and domineering aura exuding from Su Yi's body. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Su Yi, who had removed his disguise, seemed different from what they had imagined. "I believe in Su Yi. Let those people open their eyes and take a good look." Wang Shanwu puffed out his chest, his eyes burning with passion. Mu Renjia, who was standing beside him, twitched his eyes. He looked at the familiar king of geniuses with a cold face, his heart burning with fighting spirit. "If you believe in him, I believe in him too." Mu Renjia stared at Wang Shangwu, his eyes twinkling as he smiled. This time, the Yin family might really change. Lu Ti's eyes were burning. He looked into Su Yi's cold and deep eyes and nodded heavily. In the sect master's room, which was made of white jade, it was elegant and graceful. Yun Zhongli was wearing an elegant long robe, his silver hair fluttering in the wind. He frowned as he flipped through the name list of those who had entered the desperation realm. Bang! A crazy figure broke into the room. Yin Zhongli, who was nervous, relaxed his brows and scolded angrily. Do you really think you are crazy? You have no manners at all. Why? Speak. Feng Bo's body stiffened when he heard this. He took one step after another, and the red carpet began to tremble. Tell me what? Are you out of your mind? Yin Zhongli's eyes widened as he waved his sleeves. Why didn't you tell me that Su Yi is here? Feng Bo's imposing manner was overbearing as he stared fixedly at Yin Zhongli, as if he was condemning him for his crimes. A vigorous battle intent surged out of his body. You are crazy. If that brat Su Yi came, I would have captured him and brought him here. Yin Zhongli waved his hand in annoyance. Feng Bo rushed to Yin Zhongli's side and said loudly, I saw him. She looked too similar to Fu Er. And when Yuan is Su Yi? Yin Zhongli raised his eyebrows and squinted his eyes. He looked carefully at the name list in his hand. When he saw the name Wen Yuan, he stood up immediately. This kid has some guts. He really came here. He directly entered the impasse. I will ask him in the dark sea. It is better than letting him be remembered by the long family outside. I can also ask him about Jing Er. Yin Zhongli's old eyes flashed with a few rays of light. The dark sea impasse is no small matter. We agreed to enter it to find Afro's whereabouts. How can we let Ir go in there? Feng Bo's eyes were filled with tears. He was in great pain. Hearing this, Yin Zhongli's eyes flashed with a cold light. He said angrily, Back then, you and Wen Fu were chased by that old man from the Long family. It was I who took you to the Yun family to take refuge. Wen Fu saved Jing Er, who was born with terminated meridians. I am very grateful. Otherwise, when the Long family came, I wouldn't have suggested you to enter the dark sea impasse to take refuge. But she was taken away by that green-robed woman in the dark sea. I didn't want that. Wen Fu gave the wood suppression heavenly stone to Jing Er in exchange for your safety for the past few decades. Don't you cherish it? Why do you have to make yourself look less like a human? Su Jingyuan suddenly felt deflated. He recalled the past and stared at the ground with his empty eyes. He murmured, Without Wen Fu, I am not a human anymore. But now, Jing Er has disappeared without a trace. Su Yi is the only one who has been in contact with Yun Jing. Shouldn't he go in? Yin Zhongli walked down the stairs with his hands behind his back. He said coldly, Jing Yuan, you stayed in the Yin family for so many years just for this moment. Now, Su Yi is here because of Jing Er. This is fate. This is the fate of you and your father. This is also my fate. Yin Zhongli sighed and spat out the depression in his heart. His face trembled slightly. At this moment, he was like a father who had lost his soul. Fate? I don't believe it. Whoever wants to believe it will believe it. Su Jingyuan sneered. He rubbed his face hard and revealed a profound look. I have arranged for the heavenly roll grand duel to divert everyone's attention so that we can find Kuhai with peace of mind. Su, you will participate in the competition. There won't be any big problems. Yin Zhongli closed the name list and looked at Su Jingyuan. He said in a deep voice, Don't worry. You have been pretending to be crazy for so many years. Has your cultivation regressed? Don't go into court death. Boom. Su Jingyuan suddenly stood up. A terrifying aura of the Origin Dominion state shot out from the sky. He exerted force on the ground, and a blazing attack swept out instantly. I have been waiting for this moment for too long, Su Jingyuan said in a deep voice. In the Yin family's residence in Rickamon. You said that you were beaten up by Wang Shangwu's brother? On the high seat, a gloomy young man looked coldly at the dispirited Lu Xian and Lu Yi. Senior brother Lin Xian. Help! At this moment, the two young disciples outside the door rushed in again. They were miserable. After asking for the reason, Lu Xian and Lu Yi immediately shouted angrily. Wen Yuan, it's definitely Wen Yuan. Senior brother, it's him. Lu Linxian narrowed his eyes and did not say a word. After a long while, he suddenly spoke. He glanced at Lu Xian and said, How many years has it been since Wang Shangwu came in? Lu Xian and Lu Yi supported themselves on the table and said faintly, "About 4 or 5 years. Have you heard of any brothers he has?" Lu Linxian looked at the two young disciples below with interest. Lu Xian and Lu Yi looked at each other in shock and stared blankly at Lu Linxian. Lu Linxian said, "That guy is finally here. Senior brother, are you saying that when Yuan is Su Yi?" Lu Xian gritted his teeth and said, when he thought that when Yuan was the one who made Miss Yunjing disappear, his heart was burning with anger. Lu Linxian suddenly turned around and said to Lu Xian and Lu, this time, in the desperate situation of the Dark Sea, among the top 10 on the cloud list, how many people do you think want Su Yi's life? Following Lu Linchuan's train of thought, Lu Xian and Lu Yi were overjoyed. They whispered, "That's too many. There are too many people who like Yunjing. Even Miss Wan has many admirers. I have a plan. Come over here." Then, a series of terrifying laughter sounded in the room. Lu Linxian said loudly, "Su Yi, I want you to die by my hands." Chapter 21:35. After dealing with the disciples of Rickamon, Rickamon did not send anyone else. There was no movement from the ancient cloud immortal sect for a long time. It was as if nothing had happened, and no one from the inner mansion came to make trouble. Wang Shangwu's thatched cottage was like a paradise, and no one would pay attention to it. Sui decided not to wait any longer. He looked into the distance at the surrounding mountains that were rich in spiritual energy. It was as if an ancient divine beast was hibernating there. His heart was full of excitement, and he asked Lu Ti and the others to see the entire ancient cloud immortal sect. After that, the four of them activated their primordial qi and flew in the air. Lu Ti, who was flying in front, explained everything while the others followed closely. Even Wang Shanwu had a new understanding of the ancient cloud immortal sect. It turned out that the ancient cloud immortal sect also had an outer mansion, inner mansion, deacons, and elders. However, the inner mansion was different from ordinary sections. According to the 9 surnames, there were 9 elders who were in charge of the inner mansion. The 9 surnames were the Yun, Yu, Jing, Lu, Gonyang, Yuan, Shintu, Wuma, and Dongfa. The Yun family was the head of the family, and the Yu, Gonyang, and Shinta families were second in power. 10,000 years ago, the 9 people of the ancient sect jointly opened up this archaic territory. The 9 lotus formation at the entrance of the ancient sect was jointly set up by the 9 founders of the ancient sect. With Lu Ti's introduction, Su Yi finally had a general understanding of the ancient cloud immortal sect. The descendants of the 9 surnames gradually became the supreme elders or elders of the ancient cloud immortal sect. In order to ensure that the young people of the ancient cloud immortal sect are sharp in fighting, the inner mansion gradually formed a gang system. The head of the family, Yin Zhongli, encouraged the young people to form their own small sects and compete with each other. Therefore, the top 10 on the cloud list are all outstanding talents of the 9 surnames. Standing on a high place and looking into the distance, Lu Ti's expression became gloomier. The inner mansion was basically the world of the 9 surnames. Lu Ti's disappointment was clearly seen by Su Yi, who was standing behind him. According to Lu Ti's explanation, the ancient cloud immortal sect, from the outer mansion to the inner mansion, was a combination of an academy and a clan. Someone like Lu Ti, who was selected from the outer palace, had no background. Even if his talent was good, compared to the people of the 9 great families, he did not have the slightest advantage. Being able to enter the outer mansion of the ancient cloud immortal sect was a dream of many people. Who would have thought that after entering the inner palace, there would be such a big difference? Over time, one's heart would turn cold, and one's heart would gradually be worn down. Could it be that those from the outer palace who enter the inner palace will not have a day of success? Mu Renji muttered. The selection system of the ancient cloud immortal sect was far more complicated than he had imagined. Such an elite selection would definitely produce extremely terrifying talents. After an outer house disciple enters the inner house, You won't be allowed to directly become a disciple of one of the 9 great elders. You have to go through the selection in the arena. You have to be able to rank high in the rankings and gain the attention of the elders. Only then will you have the opportunity to be chosen by the elders. Only then will you be able to belong to them, obtain the relevant surname, and become a disciple of one of the 9 great elders. Lu Ti said faintly, and a trace of helplessness gushed out from his heart. He nodded. No wonder the disciples of Rickamon looked down on Lu Ti. Like Lu Ti, after entering the inner palace from the outer palace, he must have gone through unimaginable torture before finally obtaining the surname Lu. Even if he was already a deacon, he would still be an outsider if he did not join the Rickamon of the young people. The ancient aristocratic families have experienced tens of thousands of years. Their accumulation on this continent is too deep, and many things are difficult to change, Su-yi said in a low voice. Standing against the wind, the mountains in the distance were like swords that wanted to pierce through the sky, piercing through the horizon. Su-yi, I'm going to go to the arena to have a look. Mu Renjia's eyes flashed. There were still a few days before the desperation battle of the Dark Sea began. If he could compete with the people from the inner house who were still alive on the Yun list in advance, that was also the purpose of joining the Yun family. Sui smiled slightly. His eyes fell on Lu Ti, and he said softly, Master Lu Ti must be an expert in the arena. With him leading you, I can rest assured. Go quickly. Thank you, Master Lu Ti. Mu Renjia cupped his hands and smiled. What about you? Lu Ti looked at Su-yi with some doubts. Did Su-yi have other plans? Stretching himself, Su-yi looked into the distance. He patted Shang Wu's shoulder and said softly, If we enter the inner house now, won't we be targeted by the people on the Yun list in advance? The ancient sect is so big. I can take Shang Wu to practice by myself. Hearing this, Lu Ti's eyes lit up. Taking them by surprise might be able to win. Lu Ti naturally did not have the slightest doubt about Su-yi's cultivation ability. He said softly, Well, in 5 days, let's meet at the Rising Cloud Palace in the inner house. Then, the 4 of them separated and looked at Su-yi's traces in the distance. His vast aura was like an arrow piercing through the sky, and a series of disappearing shadows traversed the void. This guy's aura is probably in the Origin Grandmaster realm. Compared to those freaks on the Yin list, I don't know who's stronger. Lu Ti smiled thoughtfully and went in the direction of the inner house with Mu Renjia. After leaving, Wang Shanwu and Su-yi soared into the void and went directly into the depths of the ancient cloud Immortal sect. The surrounding ancient aura wrapped around them, and a refreshing pneuma fluctuation made them feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. The pores on their bodies gradually opened up to welcome the abundant Archean pneuma. No wonder you can reach the Origin Void realm even after being beaten. This is really a treasure trove. Su-yi found a rock and sat down casually, the corners of his mouth curling up. Wang Shanwu chuckled. He lowered his head and said in a low voice, Then what should we do now? How do we cultivate? Su-yi smiled mysteriously as he looked Wang Shanwu up and down. He had almost recovered from the injuries he had sustained during the preliminaries with the help of the Overlord's war body. Continue to be beaten. Su-yi smiled strangely. Suddenly, Wang Shanwu looked as if he had seen a ghost. He waved his hand at Su-yi and refused to do anything. Su-yi immediately stood up and crossed his arms. His face darkened, and he said angrily, Now you don't have any martial arts techniques or body movements. You want to defeat those who bullied you on the Yun list by being beaten? Wang Shanwu curled his lips, and his face fell instantly. In the next second, he was lifted up by Su-yi and performed the flying steps to the maximum. A whistling force rushed to the top of a cliff waterfall like a storm. Bang! As if a huge stone had been thrown in, the flying waves formed a rainbow under the sky. Standing at a high place, Su-yi looked down at Wang Shanwu, who had begun to be washed away. Cultivate the Overlord sealing force here. After saying that, Su-yi kicked up a huge stone from the waterfall and directly hit Wang Shanwu along with the rushing water. Chapter 2136. Working hard to update. Please refresh access later. This chapter is currently being updated. Please refresh it later. Handsome men and beautiful women visiting on mobile phones. Can you register as a member first? Register as a member of this site and use the bookmark function of the bookshelf to read more conveniently. If this chapter is about the author begging for votes, please skip to the next chapter. Please save this page so that you can read it later. Otherwise, you won't be able to find this chapter later. Recommended author: Lin Yu Jianyan. City: Best son-in-law Lin Yu Jianyan. Percent 3, 8%, 2F%, 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 2F, 18%, 2F, 18289%, 2F. Content summary. Before his master left, he left when Tian a line of the sect's secret life-saving mantra. He said that if he cultivated diligently, there would definitely be miraculous results. P.S. All the techniques, Tao formulas, cultivation methods, secret skills, and so on in this book came from the sect's secret collection. Those who are not true disciples should not rashly practice them. Remember, be careful. Percent E3%, 80%, 80%, E6%, 9C%, 80%, E4% BD%, B3%, E5%, A5% B3%, E5%, A9% BF%, E6% 9, E% 97%, E7%, B% BD%, E6% B1% 9F% E9%, E2% 9C. Percent E8% BD%, AC% E9%, 80%, 81%, E9%, 97%, 8%, E5% 9C% B0%, E5% 9D%, 80% EF% BC% 9, A% 3, A% 2F%, 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 2F 18%, 2F 18289%, 2F%. 0, A% 0, A%, E3%, 80%, 80%, E3%, 80%, 80%, 3, A%, 2F%, 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 2F 18%, 2F 18289%, 2F%, 0, A% 0, A%, E3%, 80%, 80%, E3%, 80%, 80%, E5%, 86%, 85%, E5% AE% B9%, E8% AF% 95%, E8% AF% BB% EF% BC% 9, A% 3, A% 2F%, 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 2F 18%, 2F 18289%. Chapter 1: Witnessing my own cremation. I'm sorry. We tried our best. Let's prepare for the funeral. The doctor's voice outside the ward was very soft, but Lin Yu, who was lying on the bed, heard it clearly. Perhaps a person's sense of hearing would become exceptionally sensitive before they died, especially a mother's cries, which were exceptionally sharp. Lin Yu was not the first to sacrifice his life for a just cause. He did not regret it, but he felt sorry for his mother. His father died early, and his mother raised him single-handedly. He didn't know how much she had suffered. Now that he was admitted to Qinghai City People's Hospital with excellent results, his life with his mother was about to brighten up. He didn't expect such an accident to happen. Damned heavens! Lin Yu cursed in a low voice. His eyelids couldn't hold on any longer, and he slowly closed them. My son! A mournful cry suddenly woke Lin Yu up. He opened his eyes and realized that he was standing at the end of the bed while his mother was crying loudly on the bed. Mom, why are you crying? Aren't I here perfectly fine? Lin Yu was overjoyed, thinking that she had miraculously recovered. She reached out to pat her mother, only to find that her hand had actually passed through her mother's body. His mother did not react at all. She was still crying on the bed. Lin Yu's expression changed. He raised his head and saw that he was still lying on the bed. His face was shriveled and pale. Obviously, he was no longer alive. I'm dead. Lin Yu lowered his head and looked at himself standing at the end of the bed. He realized that his body was a little pale and slightly transparent. Lin Yu was shocked. It turned out that there was a soul after death. No matter what he said or did, his mother couldn't feel it. With the help of a nurse, his mother reluctantly put on Lin Yu's shroud. Then, the nurse moved his body into the funeral car. His mother got into the car and sat beside his body. She held his hand tightly, and tears kept flowing out of her red and swollen eyes. Don't worry. I'll go down to accompany you immediately after I'm done here. For her son was her everything. If her son was dead, there was no meaning for her to live in this world. Lin Yu panicked when he heard that his mother wanted to commit suicide. He imitated the scene in the movies and lay on the body. However, it was useless. Only his soul sat up every time. The car arrived at the crematorium quickly. After paying, the staff did a simple makeup for Lin Yu and gave his mother a number plate. Then, the crematorium staff pushed Lin Yu's body to the crematorium. No! When the crematorium staff pushed his body into the crematorium, Lin Yu collapsed instantly. As his body burned, Lin Yu felt that his consciousness was weakening. There were countless faint light spots on his body that were dissipating in all directions. His soul was also slowly fading. At the same time, another world began to flash in front of his eyes. What he saw was endless darkness, mixed with red flames and shrill screams. Hell! This was the first thought that flashed through Lin Yu's consciousness. A strong sense of fear swallowed him instantly. His soul subconsciously bumped around in the air. The light spots continued to float out of his soul, and the speed was getting faster and faster. The world of hell in his eyes became clearer and clearer. He could hear a mysterious and hoarse voice calling him from below. At this time, Lin Yu's body in the crematorium was almost burned to ashes. In the ashes, a jasper-colored pendant suddenly glowed brightly in the fire. This was left to Lin Yu by his grandfather when he passed away. He had been wearing it since he was young. When he was wearing the shroud, his mother deliberately didn't take it off. The pendant glowed brighter and brighter. Then it broke with a bang. A wisp of dark green light rushed out of the pendant and attached itself to Lin Yu's soul. Then an old voice sounded in his mind. I'm your ancestor's saint. From today onwards, you're my successor. You'll receive my medical skills. You'll help others and yourself. Then the voice dissipated. A huge amount of information suddenly flooded Lin Yu's mind. Medical skills, cultivation methods, and some of his ancestors' travel experiences all rushed into Lin Yu's mind. Lin Yu felt very excited with the information in his mind. It was as if he had opened the door to a new world. But this excitement disappeared in a flash. What was the use of receiving the inheritance of the secret skill? He was already a dead man who was about to go to hell. As this thought flashed through his mind, a memory related to the soul return technique suddenly popped up in Lin Yu's mind. The memory showed that through the soul return technique, a person whose soul had not dissipated after death could be reborn. However, Lin Yu's physical body had already turned into ashes in the fire. Fortunately, there was also a record of the soul return technique for a damaged physical body. When the physical body is destroyed, turn into a ghost. Find a living body and attach to it. Lin Yu took a deep breath. It meant that if his physical body was damaged and he wanted to be reborn, he could only turn into a ghost through the soul return technique and find someone else's physical body to possess. One had to know that in the human consciousness, ghosts were the embodiment of evil. Moreover, if he possessed someone else's body, wouldn't it be equivalent to taking away their life? While he was hesitating, Lin Yu's soul had become fainter and fainter. All that was left was an illusion. The voice beside his ear was also becoming clearer. Lin Yu clenched his teeth. Looking at the corpses that were being pushed into the cremation hall, he suddenly had an idea. If dead people couldn't do it, then living dead people should work, right? A few minutes later, Lin Yu arrived at the largest vegetative care center in Shanghai City. The update was the fastest on the net. Many vegetative people had no consciousness and would never wake up. They were only alive with their bodies. Lin Yu believed that if he chose to possess such people, it wouldn't be considered as killing people. At first, Lin Yu went from ward to ward to ward to find a suitable body. However, he realized that his consciousness was becoming fainter and fainter. Soon, it would disappear completely. The call from hell was also becoming more and more urgent. Lin Yu didn't have time to think. He targeted a male vegetative person in his 20s and chanted the soul return technique. Suddenly, he turned into a wisp of white smoke and rushed into the vegetative person. You can't escape. At the same time, the call beside his ears suddenly turned into a shrill scream. Then, Lin Yu lost all consciousness. When Lin Yu woke up, he only felt that the strong light was dazzling. It took him a while to adjust to it. He lowered his head and saw that he was lying in the ward. Success! Lin Yu was so excited that he almost screamed. He sat up abruptly and looked at his new body. He couldn't wait to tear off the needle in his hand. Then he jumped off the bed. However, as soon as his feet touched the ground, his body staggered and fell to the ground. Perhaps because he had been lying down for a long time, the young man's muscles were slightly atrophied. Lin Yu staggered up and looked up at the calendar on the wall. He realized that it was already the next day. Touching the bed and the wall, feeling the cold temperature from his hands, he felt like he was in a dream. He had just died yesterday. He didn't expect that he would be resurrected today. After moving a little and adapting to his new body, he couldn't wait to rush out of the hospital. There was only one thing in his mind now, and that was to see his mother. At this time, the bun shop was crowded with people. More than a dozen gangsters were clamoring for Lin Yu's mother to return the money. In order to perform the surgery for Lin Yu's mother was forced to borrow more than 100,000 yuan from loan sharks. Knowing that Lin Yu was dead, the gangsters couldn't wait to collect the debt. Don't worry, I will sell the shop in a few days. I will return the money to you when I get it. Please leave first. Lin Yu's mother begged with red and swollen eyes. She hoped that they could send them away as soon as possible. Her son had just passed away. She didn't want him to leave in peace. F***CK. How much is your rundown shop worth? Your son is dead. Once we leave, who will we ask for money if you run away? The leading gangster with yellow hair cursed. Don't worry, I won't run away. When I get enough money, I will return it to you immediately. No matter what, we must get the money today. The gangster wouldn't give up. But I really don't have any money now. You also know that I spent all my money in order to treat my son. Lin Yu's mother was heartbroken. There was a trace of pleading in her hoarse voice. It's okay if you don't have money. How about this? You transfer the ownership of your rundown house to us. Consider it as paying off the debt. The gangster rolled his eyes and said his real purpose. Lin Yu's mother was slightly stunned. The house was left by Lin Yu's grandfather. Although it was a little old, the location was very good. According to the current housing price in Shanghai, it could be sold for at least 2 or 3 million yuan. They were simply robbing in the first place. But now that her son was dead, her home was gone. What was the point of keeping the house? She could leave with peace of mind after paying off the debt. Thinking of this, Lin Yu's mother nodded in despair. Just when she was about to agree, an angry shout suddenly came from outside the door. No, our house is worth at least a few million yuan. You are robbing. Then, Lin Yu rode his new body and rushed in. F***CKU. Where did this bastard come from? It's none of your business. The gangster was furious. Seeing the hospital gown on Lin Yu, he thought that Lin Yu was a psychopath who came out of nowhere. He rushed over and raised his hand to slap him. Lin Yu dodged subconsciously and reached out to push him. The gangster flew out for 5 or 6 meters in an instant. He drew an arc in the air and fell on the table inside with a bang. Kill him for me. The gangster covered his chest and screamed twice. Then he gave the order. More than a dozen gangsters rushed up immediately and surrounded Lin Yu to punch and kick him. Lin Yu quickly raised his hand to fight back. Then there was a lot of wailing in the bun shop. The gangsters screamed again and again. More than a dozen gangsters rushed up together, but they couldn't even touch the corner of Lin Yu's clothes. Lin Yu's punches and kicks hit them as if they were hit by a car. They were in so much pain that they couldn't get up with one punch. Lin Yu was also very shocked. It was said that a person possessed by a ghost was very strong. He didn't expect it to be true. Moreover, these people's movements were very slow in his eyes. It was easy to dodge. Call the police. Call the police. The gangster was frightened by the scene in front of him. He had seen people who were good at fighting, but he had never seen someone who was so good at fighting. He was simply inhuman. Hearing that they were going to call the police, Lin Yu's mother rushed over and grabbed Lin Yu's hand. She said anxiously, "Young man, they're going to call the police. Hurry up and leave. I will take care of this." "Mom, what are you saying? How can I leave you alone?" Lin Yu was so happy that he was about to cry. It was great that he was still alive to see his mother. Hearing how he addressed her, his mother was slightly stunned. She looked at him blankly. Looking at his mother's eyes, Lin Yu suddenly realized that he was alive, but in a different body. His mother didn't recognize him at all. "I'm sorry, Annie. When I see you, I think of my mother, so I couldn't help but blurt it out. Please don't mind." Lin Yu was afraid that his mother would be frightened by his real identity, so he hurriedly made up a lie. "It's okay, young man. Hurry up and leave. We can't implicate you in our family's affairs," Lin Yu's mother said as she pushed him out. Lin Yu didn't answer. He picked up the chopsticks on the table and threw them at the gangster. With a bang, the chopsticks nailed the phone that the gangster had just pressed 110 to the wall. The gangster was so scared that his face turned pale. The chopsticks on the wall were only 1 centimeter away from his ear. If there was a slight deviation, it would be his head that was nailed to the wall. "Help! Murder! Help!" The gangster was so scared that he immediately screamed. There was an indescribable grievance in his voice. They were the ones who owed him money first. "Stop yelling. I will pay the money for Annie Chin," Lin Yu said coldly. Since he was resurrected, he should pay the debt by himself. "Young man, how can you do that? This is the first time we met. How can I let you pay the money for me?" Lin Yu's mother looked at Lin Yu with some doubts. She didn't know why, but this young man gave her a feeling of déjà vu. She wasn't surprised that Lin Yu knew her surname. Many netizens knew that her son had sacrificed his life for a just cause. Her name and contact information had also been dug up. Many kind-hearted people wanted to send her son off, but she rejected them all. "Okay, this is what you said. Then give us the money." The gangster didn't care why Lin Yu was paying the money for others. As long as he could get the money, his task would be completed. "Give me 3 days," Lin Yu said. The gangster was a little speechless. Lin Yu spoke so arrogantly that he thought he could take out the money immediately. "Why? You don't believe me?" Lin Yu frowned when he saw that the gangster didn't speak. His tone was a little cold. "I believe you. But, big brother, you have to tell me your name, right?" Looking at Lin Yu's cold eyes, the gangster couldn't help but shiver. "Name? Yes. He left in a hurry this morning. He didn't even have time to see this person's name. Don't worry, I will definitely do what I promised you. So, 3 days later, here, just come over. I will pay you back with interest." The reason why Lin Yu was so confident was all because of his body. He thought that since he could live in the nursery center, no matter how ordinary this young man's family was, he could at least take out 100 or 200,000 yuan. He would use it first and return it when he made money. After seeing Lin Yu's skills, the gangster didn't dare to say anything more. Just as he was about to nod his head, he suddenly looked outside the store in a daze, as if he was attracted by something. Lin Yu also looked outside curiously. He saw a red BMW X5 at the door. As soon as the door opened, a fair and slender leg stepped out. Then, a tall beauty in a white bohemian dress got out of the car. /book/18/18289/ the beauty in the long dress stroked her long black hair and took off her sunglasses. Her fair skin and delicate face were simply amazing. The gangster and his subordinates were stunned. Lin Yu couldn't help but be attracted. This beauty's appearance and temperament were indeed superb. The beauty in the long dress looked up at the bun shop, frowned slightly, and then walked in quickly. /book/18/18289/ "Do you want to buy some buns? What kind of filling do you want?" Lin Yu couldn't help but blurt out. He used to help his mother sell buns, so it had become a conditioned reflex for him to speak like this. "What did you call me?" The beauty in a long dress glanced at him coldly and said in a displeased tone, "Beauty." Lin Yu felt that there was no problem with the way he called her, but he couldn't help but be a little confused. It was the first time that he saw someone who didn't want to listen to him when he called her beauty. The beauty in the long dress looked at him and said coldly, "Well, Hejiarong, you have been in a coma for 2 months, and you don't even recognize your wife." Chapter 2137. Wang Shangwu's expression gradually calmed down. Streams of spiritual energy were injected into his bulging muscles. They were sparkling and translucent, as if he was wearing a divine ring. Flashing electric arcs floated down from the 9 heavens and hit the water surface, stirring up layers of mist. The ferocious spiritual energy in the air quickly enveloped the entire spring. The light was mystical, bright, and dazzling. Gradually, Wang Shangwu, whose breathing was smooth, entered a state of cultivation like an old monk. He smiled faintly and said indifferently, "Cultivate well. I'll wake you up tomorrow morning. Elder Hong, if the effect is not enough, I'll have to rely on you to add more herbs." He turned to Qi Fei Hong, and the two walked side by side toward the entrance of the mysterious space. Qi Fei Hong floated beside Yi and patted his chest. He looked back at Wang Shangwu and promised, "This guy is still far from the real Overlord's War body. If I can see the complete activation of the Overlord's War body, I'll be in luck. I'll leave it to you. I'll go outside and see if the ancient Cloud Immortal sect has snow tobacco and spirit-nourishing mud." Yi raised his eyebrows and nodded at Qi Fei Hong. The ancient Cloud Immortal sect had existed in the Tianyin continent for tens of thousands of years. The chances of having snow tobacco in the ancient Cloud Immortal sect was much higher than the outside world. This was also the reason why Yi wanted to bring Wang Shangwu to train alone. Instead of entering the inner mansion and causing a conflict, it was better to make good use of the time to train and find what they needed. If the ancient Cloud Immortal sect did not have these herbs, Yi would naturally not miss the chance to find them in the desolate land of the Dark Sea. After giving Qi Fei Hong a few simple instructions, Yi turned around and used the rising wind's 100 changing steps to quickly leave the mysterious space. The moonlight shone in the dark blue curtain, and the sparse stars twinkled, bright and dazzling. Standing at the top of a cliff, Yi's sleeves were brushed by the cool mountain breeze. The fluttering sleeves and the swaying forest lines reflected each other's brilliance. Yi raised his head to look at the halo of the moon. A glimmer of light flashed across his deep eyes. From the information he obtained from Wang Shangwu, even Lu Linxian, who was ranked 8th on the cloud roll, was at the 4th level of the Origin Ancestor stage, just like him. The youths nurtured by the 9 great clans all had terrifying cultivation bases. More importantly, not only were the disciples of the aristocratic families provided with the best resources, but Yin Zhongli also allowed them to set up their own factions so that they could restrain each other and train each other. Such an elite, genius talent and battle prowess had already reached a terrifying level. Yi sighed in his heart. In a few years, the experts on the heavenly roll would not be able to become Grand Elders even in the Saint Mountain and Sky Dragon sect. This was the gap between the starting line. Moreover, Yi believed that every expert of this level had many trump cards. Without relying on the experts, the formation eye, or any formation, he could only rely on himself. Would he be able to compete with Yun Hanshen, who was ranked 2nd on the cloud roll, if he combined all his trump cards? He was afraid that the cloud roll great battle would not be that easy. Subsequently, Yi shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He looked at the tip of the swaying tree in the distance and said, "Find the medicinal herbs first. Let's try my luck." As soon as Yi finished his words, he closed his eyes and read the information about the Dragon Ancestor Medicine scripture in his mind. After carefully memorizing the structure and appearance of the snow tobacco and spirit-nourishing mud, Yi quickly opened up his spiritual consciousness. The soul energy of a 4th-level Origin Ancestor stage gushed out suddenly like an invisible big net that began to collect everything around him without missing anything. Boom! At that moment, an explosion was heard and attracted Yi's attention. Extremely far away, there was a subtle explosion of Origin energy in the sky like fireworks. The sharp sound of the wind breaking lasted for a few breaths before it exploded high in the sky. In the next second, there was an explosion of Origin energy in succession. The dazzling Origin energy light woke up the demonic beasts in the dense forest, causing them to roar continuously. Looking carefully at the sky, Sui suddenly saw a ball of energy light shoot out like a meteorite. It was like a shock wave that caused the entire sky to solidify instantly. The violent shock wave pressed down on the surrounding dense forest directly. Someone is fighting over there. At this time, in the ancient cloud Immortal sect? Looking at the fierce aura that burst out from the depths of the mountain range in the distance, Sui curled his lips and his interest was immediately piqued. After pondering for a while, Sui raised his eyebrows and rushed down. The invisible wings flapped behind him, and he restrained his aura as he headed towards the source of the explosion. Roar! Roar! After crossing a few mountain peaks, Sui followed the remnants of the aura in the air and finally arrived between two peaks. He saw a young lady standing in the air between the peaks. The woman was only 23 or 24 years old. She was dressed in a crimson robe with golden edges. There was a half-moon pattern embroidered on the robe. Her beautiful hair was tied up high in a bun, which added a bit of valiance. On her elegant and refined face, there was a hint of agility and liveliness. Her clear and cold eyes stared down with a hint of nobility and elegance, causing people to be intimidated just by looking at her. It was as if a new moon had been born. "Who are you?" Sui looked at the bottom of the peak and saw a skinny old man squinting his eyes. His triangular pupils released a dark green light as he shouted angrily at the lady. It seemed that the explosion just now was caused by these two people. A demon grandmaster realm expert. His strength is not weak. In his mind, Sui quickly activated the Origin Supreme technique. Sui's innate affinity with the demonic beast surged into his mind, and he immediately knew that the old man below was the human form of the demonic beast. "You must be the honorable grass spirit." The young lady nodded slightly as a hint of respect flashed across her eyes. The old man's body was slightly bent as he held onto a withered wooden cane. He stroked his beard and smiled, as if he enjoyed being addressed by the young lady. "Little girl, are you from the Yin family?" The honorable grass spirit's voice was very old, like the sound of old tree bark rubbing against each other. In the sky, the young woman was holding a flawless white flute. She looked at the old man and said coldly, "Senior grass spirit, I'm not a member of the Yin clan. I came here so late at night to borrow something from you." The young lady's words were like moonlight shining down on the old man. After the old man laughed dryly, his wrinkled skin darkened. He said faintly, "Since you know that I am the honorable grass spirit, you naturally know that I was forced to flee here. The Yin family head promised me that I could live here for a long time and absorb the essence of heaven and earth. That was why I was able to cultivate for so many years and become a human. Since you are not from the Yin family, there is no need for me to repay you. You should leave quickly." Hearing the old man's words, the young lady frowned and said coldly, "The desperate straits of the Black Sea are about to open. I must get what you want. If you stop me, I can only..." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.